the speaker.
It's fancy.
Welcome Littleton to the Select Board meeting for Monday, October 7th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have, going through the agenda, we have the reading of the mail, department updates, Council on Aging recognition, talk about Neshoba Valley Medical Center, two from the town clerk about the election warrant, and hanging of the Friends of the Veterans sign, and request from the Veterans Agents for Veterans Day planning. 7 o'clock we'll have public input. 7:15 we'll have a joint meeting with Finance Committee to talk about the 5-year projections, the Planning Board zone article on adult use marijuana establishments, and to review the special town meeting warrant. 8 o'clock we'll have Select Board discussions to talk about an administrative assistant position for the Planning Board, and talk about, introduce Anthony Wilson from the Collins Center to talk about a charter process, approve a revised HCA with Community Care Collective, talk about submitting a request to LWD for $15,000 for voting booths, and an update on the orchard. 9 o'clock we'll have minutes and a prompt adjournment. So, mail.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board. We've got a number of different vacancies in town. We would love to have people get engaged and maybe think about some of these committees: agricultural, clean lakes, conservation, cultural council, economic development, historical, master plan, permanent municipal building committee, Nagog Hill Orchard, Taxation Aid Committee, Transportation Advisory Council, and ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. Everyone sign up to receive public notifications for the town of Littleton, community impacts, public safety activity, town meeting changes, town events, transportation issues, public health concerns. Stay informed. Also, we received a correspondence from Infinity to the Select Board that Comcast will be discontinuing the use of cable cards with Comcast-issued equipment on October 24th, 2024. Customers are receiving advance notice of this change via a bill, in the message in their bill. We also received notification of Brown and Caldwell. The subject was a notification Phase 2 comprehensive site assessment, aggregate industries quarry on Air Road in Littleton. The submittal of the Phase 2 assessment report was submitted to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and it is the profession's opinion and judgment, to the best of their knowledge, information, and belief, the response actions that are subject to this submittal have been implemented in accordance with the applicable provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 21E, and are appropriate and reasonable to accomplish the purpose of such response actions. That is it for mail, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Council on Aging recognition?
Actually, if we could, as a result of some of the honorees' availability for this evening, the director had requested that we postpone this until the November 4th meeting, please.
Okay.
You want to just mention what it is, because it is a big deal.
Yeah, it is the Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry are grateful for all the hard work that the Little Council on Aging does to get food to the elderly and homebound clients, and everything that they do. The team, the Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry named the Littleton Council on Aging an outstanding community partner this year at their annual meeting, and that will be 2 weeks from this evening at 5:30 to 7:30 in Devon's. And it's quite a big deal, as Liz was explaining, that other organizations or companies that were recognized, juggernauts like Amazon was recently. So it's really very impressive. And with them not being, we thought it would be good that we could show pictures at the November 4th meeting of the event and have the select board recognize that.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. It's been going on a while now with Littleton. They do a lot of delivery service for Lowe's officials to our restaurants.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to attend because we'll be here.
That's right. Yes, we will. Yes.
Exactly.
Do you want to, are you doing the fire chief? Or
I
do you
am.
wanna-
I am doing that also.
Okay.
Okay, update for the board. There was, as previously the select board was notified, there's $250,000 grants for 8 communities that have been impacted by the closure of the Neshoba Valley Medical Center. And the grants, the period of the grants will be from July 1st of 2024 through December 31st, 2025. And the grants are focused on, let me see, I'm sorry. The grants are really focused on medical equipment, training, things of that nature. There is concern from the chief that what it does not impact, the money cannot be used for the financial impact with callbacks and things of that nature. But the Littleton Fire Department is compiling quotes for needed equipment or upgrades, as well as exploring regional opportunities with partner communities. All of the chiefs are experiencing impact on the wages, as I had just mentioned, and our chief particularly is continuing to push for the state to assist with personnel costs. Stewards' failure to plan financials should not become a financial burden on the communities. Part of the chief was also named, was on a task force, was named to be on a task force as a result of the closure. And part of that component is a healthcare canvassing that will begin, and I will talk a little more in detail about that in a minute, this week, and it's going to collect information on current healthcare needs for the community. And there will be a meeting this Thursday with area town administrators, managers, and police chiefs, informational on communities that are affected in the process of doing the outreach. Regionally, all the fire departments have been seeing an increased wait at hospitals over the past 2 weeks, despite an average to slightly below average rate of calls. The delay, the return on ambulance to the respective towns resulted in some communities having to be sporadically call mutual aid more than prior to the closure. And as we get into the cold and flu season, the chief feels that which is typically an especially busy stretch, these delays could become significant. One thing I would like to let everybody know out there is the chief would like me to express that there are some doctors' offices that were affiliated with Steward in the closure of the Neshoba Valley Medical Center, but they will be closing. The doctors that were affiliated will be closing on October 31st. We do not have a list of those doctors, but please urge anyone that had a Steward-affiliated doctor to ask if they are part of the closure to get copies of their medical records before the office closes. Once the office is closed, the process to obtain records may be significantly more challenging. And if I can just speak to, so this Thursday, I'll speak to the canvassing. I received this afternoon, I received an email from the Airtown manager that he is also on that working group, but they have the task force, but they have working groups. And part of their efforts with Healthcare for All to conduct a public canvassing to obtain information and data from residents in Air, Groton, Harvard, Littleton, Lunenburg, Pepperell, and Shirley. Healthcare for All would like to begin canvassing as early as the week of October 14th. So we are going to have a call on Thursday at 1 o'clock to review that process, and I will keep the board informed of timing, impacts, how they're going to split it up, in what sections, if there's an order of the sections of the community that they're going to address. So I'll keep the board apprised of that, and that's it.
On the Neshoba, are we tracking things like, I know we track the number of calls we get, but do we track the average length of the calls or a statistical?
That is being tracked, the length of They do have, they log when they leave, and then they log when they return, or they need to do that, so that's being kept also by the chief.
So we could compare like 21 to 3,
Exactly.
24, so
Average call length, out of, exactly.
that would be something important to see.
Right.
Okay.
Mark,
Any other-
I had a question. It's actually back a few things, but the comprehensive site assessment with aggregate, are we waiting for something? I saw the letter was to you as chair, but what's the,
So,
Is there-
reading the letter, it looked like they were just doing the PFAS study of the water going
were they
through
forced
the-
to? Was this something that was forced upon them? Do we know? At aggregate?
I don't believe so.
It seems like we're waiting for the result of something in that letter. It just seemed to me like, okay, they're doing all this, but is there something that we're a report?
We are not, it's not,
No action item?
there's no action on our part.
Okay.
On the town's part. It is, it's strictly on aggregate industries, but they're also known of Wholesome NER Inc. now, formerly Aggregate Industries, Northeast region.
So we don't know what spawned this study or the letter, if it was just a 5-year renewal
I mean,
or...
typically, it's an obligation when these, when these environmental reports are that they're supposed to be sending letters to the select board, so it isn't necessarily, I mean, it's hard to tell as to what may have initiated it, but it's a pretty common thing that we'll receive.
I know it's
letter.
Mass DEP requires it, but I didn't know if this is something Mass DEP is going to say, no, this is not, you failed, or you've got work to do. That's why,
That could be on aggregate industries.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Anything further on Neshoba Valley?
No, sir.
Okay, town clerk.
Good evening, Penny Burge, Town Clerk. So a couple of items here this evening. The first and foremost, you do have somewhere before you the town warrant for the election, state election for November 5th to be signed. It is 5 pages long, and I just need an approval for it and then a signature so that it can get posted.
Any comments before I do a motion? Disagreements with the warrant article?
Oh, I mean, I do, but that
But you
doesn't
can't,
affect this.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Move that the select board vote to approve and sign the election warrant for the November 5th, 2024 election.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the second item is we are requesting the Friends of the Veterans to be able to hang once again from the Friday after Thanksgiving until January 2nd, 2025, the cards that we do each year for the veterans at the Common.
Those are very tiny.
They're not, well,
But they're
really not,
waterproof.
but we have a few different ones that we're going to change it up a little bit this year, but these are from last year. George Sanders, as you all know, in the back.
Thank you for your service.
Ed Williams, who is and Nick Schimmel, so a couple of Marines and a U.S. Army. So we're going to put Gary, but we figured.
No. Bottom of the tree.
Sorry. Anything else?
On that note, just looking for approval to be able to do it and
Okay.
for the dates.
Move that the select board vote to approve the Friends of the Veterans to hang veteran cards on trees on the Littleton Common from Friday, November 2nd, 2024 through Thursday, January 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, if I can request a suspension of the rules, I'm moving something out of order, so Ms. Quarry can leave instead of, and I would, if it's all possible, a vote to submit a request to LALW commissioners for $15,000 grant for voting booths, if that's
But we
okay.
like her presence here.
I just love spending
As we
the
all,
whole day here.
as we all would, but if that's okay with the board.
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure, so basically, to be totally honest with you, this is the full work of George Sanders, who actually went before Mr. Asiero, and had quite the conversation, and you do have a letter before you for the $15,000. And what it is, we are looking to get a grant from LELWD for $15,000 to replace the antiquated voting booths that we have, that many of you, when you come in to vote, you're finding that they're getting a little rickety. It takes a little bit longer to set up, it takes a little bit longer to break down. Pretty soon, they're not going to be able to be set up and broken down, because it just, it's a little bit tougher each and every election that we have. They're over 21 years old, so. Thank you to George for all of his hard work.
So in your letter, you said there's a possibility of a fourth precinct before too long. Are we buying enough to
Yes,
last us?
it'll be
or-
covered. So we're looking at 10,000, we're going to be looking to have to move to a fourth precinct, but the problem is that if we move to a fourth precinct, we're also going to be having to move out of the school, because you wouldn't be able to house 4 precincts in one school, so it changes a lot of dynamics as well. But we will have enough booths for the 4 precincts.
Okay.
Move that the Select Board vote to submit the request to LELWD Commissioners for $15,000 grant for voting booths.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
I assume we've already targeted, you have a price, so I'm assuming we already targeted what we're looking at getting?
A couple different ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it'll be a matter of, once, if the grant goes through, be able to come back with a full price and talk to LELWD and go from there.
Thanks to both LELWD and Mr. Sanders for making that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Sanders always makes your life easier, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. Absolutely does.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for holding it up.
Veterans agent?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Basically, I'm here to ask about the Veterans Day ceremony at the Common, and to have the Stevens Streets closed off so we can do a setup and, form up for other things that day. Also, we got to remind Rivoli to make sure they have all the equipment off that road for that day, please.
Any comments?
Oh, all for it.
Let's do it.
And we're invited.
Yeah. I also have the commander of the VFW here if you want to ask about anything that we've done over the year. Review.
Same schedule as usual?
I'm sorry?
Same schedule as usual on Veterans Day? Rough,
yeah.
the same order of ceremonies as usual?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess what makes it a little different is it's at World War I ceremony.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Excuse me, it's at the World War I monument.
No, down Common.
It says World War I monument in the letter.
That was the one at the corner of Shattuck Street, World War I. We did that in 2019, right?
Right, but this time it's going back to the full common, right?
We're going back to the Common.
Okay, so at the Veterans Memorial, or the Veterans plaque.
Right, the Veterans Corner, yes, the Veterans Corner. Yes.
Okay. Move that the Select Board vote to approve the Veterans Agent request to close Stevens Street for the Veterans Day ceremony on the Littleton Commons, scheduled for 11 a.m. on Monday, November 11th, 2024.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Do you have any questions for him?
Nope.
I have an update if you wanted. You asked me a year ago to bring an update.
Sure.
Please.
Michael Kiernan, VFW Commander for Littleton Post 6556. So in the past year, since we voted for the allocation of our post to exceed funds from Littleton, we've held more than 26 parties at our post, Veterans Day ceremonies and luncheons at the VFW hosted by the Friends of Littleton Veterans. Holiday Bazaar, we've always at the Holiday Bazaar, we do Army-Navy game held at the post. That's also hosted by the Friends of Littleton Veterans. They help out with that a lot. We hold district meetings for District 15 through the VFW at our post. We've held trivia night at our post multiple times in the past year. We also assist with the Veterans Agent on helping put out flags for our veterans who have passed. And then also with the Memorial Day Parade, hosted with lunch. One of our town residents, Jack Schimmel, provides all the food with nothing back. He donates it every year due to his son being a Marine and his father was in World War II. We also presented a scholarship to Ava Whirling for Voice of Democracy essay she wrote through the VFW this year in June. We were at every third Thursday that was there, besides the one that was canceled in August. Just recently, we were at Harvard Fest, we were at Oktoberfest in Littleton. We also presented our 2 Eagle Scouts that just became Eagle Scouts this past month, Jonathan Beltrami and Linus Nealand, with awards through our post. And then obviously what's happening in November, we'll be having Veterans Day. We also have a luncheon afterwards, and that's provided this year by the Rotary Club of Littleton. Friends of Littleton Veterans will be helping out hosting that as well. So obviously, anybody after the ceremonies are welcome to come with their families. One of our big help is Ed Williams, who is the State Veterans Service Officer. He has held multiple meetings with veterans, local veterans, to help them get filing for disability claims and helping out veterans that need help in town, plus other surrounding towns for us. And basically want to thank a whole bunch of most clubs in Littleton, including the Friends of Littleton Veterans, Fire Police, Highway, Rotary Club, COA for helping out setting up breakfasts the 4th Wednesday of the month, Light and Water, Boy Scouts, and if I miss somebody, there is one other person, I'm sorry. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He helps us every year with helping out clean up our post every year.
Paul Biagioni.
Yes, thank you, Paul Vigioni. Just want to make sure I said his name as well. And is there any questions you have for me?
When's your next trivia night?
It is coming up. It is November, I believe it's the 16th?
It is,
No, trivia?
the trivia is 17th.
17th, yes, so.
17th, I believe it is.
Yep, and it's $10 a person, and 5:30's check-in, 6 o'clock we start. Gary knows well. We welcome everybody, obviously, whoever would like to attend. And if you don't have a team, we can get you in a team, so not a big deal there. Anything else?
No, thank you.
You guys hosted the CERT team also. They did that mock drill, was it a plane crash or something?
Oh, yes, we did
Yeah.
do that too, yep, as well.
So the VFW.
And also want to obviously thank you guys for helping keep our post and making sure that we can help fellow veterans in town and locally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public input?
Oh, thanks.
I might have missed some people on there, but have them if you need me to.
No, that's good, that's good, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Great Road in Littleton. I want to thank Representative Jim Osorio for finding the money for the town clerk with regards to that. We have a few more items there that I'm going to be discussing with him this coming Wednesday for the town of Littleton as well. And I would like to talk about recognitions here. I spoke with the town manager there, and we had a nice conversation about the program that is going to be put in place for the people here in the town of Littleton. But I also want to point out something that I think that is very important, and I'm going to be sending him a list of the people that I had submitted, so keep him from having to go back and try to find that information. There's a total of 9 persons that I would like for the town to recognize their contribution as a member of the town of Littleton, and especially the people that's with the Light and Water Department. As it stands right now, there's at least 3 people down in Georgia right now that's working with the disaster that came through on the hurricane down there, putting power back on. I think it's very important that Littleton realize that we have a great part in this nation in disasters. We're always sending people somewhere to help out. They're coming from Littleton. And in one case, Littleton was the only community in the town, in the state of Massachusetts that volunteered to go and help others. And that was with the water that was in Mississippi down there, and they sent people down there to do that. I think it's very important that we recognize the quality people that we have working for the town and willing to volunteer and take on tasks, leave their family behind and go and help others. That is very important. There's nothing that's more important than family as far as I'm concerned. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I want to say something that I disagree with the Finance Committee and this board with regard to article that you have on the warrant, which is regarding the Indian Hill building up there when they voted at the town meeting to give the $400,000 for the drawings, the plans, and so forth for that. I understand they did not utilize the $400,000, and there's money left. And I understand you have an article there to transfer what was left over to the Indian Hill, let's say, budget that they have there. I disagree with that. If there's money left in anything that we approve, and they was able to be efficient enough to save some of it and get a good deal, that money should come back to the budget, come back to the treasury office. You shouldn't later transfer it to another project as a means saying adding money there when money ain't been added for it. I'm going to speak against it at town meeting, so I'm telling you in the head, because I believe that it's wrong. It's not the right way to control the budget. If you get money and we approve it and you don't use it all, you should send it back to the town. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Saul Marini, 149 Hartwell. 2 opportunities for communication improvement. I was looking for something recently and discovered that there are still a fair number of boards and committees that do not record their meetings. And to whatever degree that you can encourage, enforce, guide folks to record meetings, I think that would improve people's ability to know what's going on in town. So that was one. The second was we recently had Hartwell was repaved, which is lovely and much appreciated. But they did completely reconfigure the intersection of Hartwell and Lawrence Street. And there was, to my knowledge, no notice to anybody of how that reconfiguration was going to be done, or opportunity to provide input or feedback. There's, in theory, a bus stop on that corner, but there's no place for kids to wait. So it seems like that would be, if we're doing major configuration changes, some communication, some opportunity for feedback would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Members update.
Looking at me, once again, George stole a little bit of thunder there with Littleton Electric. another storm, and I would assume they might even be staying down there as Hurricane Martin is looking pretty ominous. So the first responder barbecue, I know we attended, was a great success. Once again, it was great to see all the seniors and the first responders. It's so well attended. So appreciate getting to speak with a lot of both the seniors and the first responders at that event. And I know we already met Adam Zafirakopoulos, Littleton Police. I know he's graduated, or he's graduating this week, so I think that'll be our official new member of the police department. So that's all I have.
I want to also talk about the Littleton Electric Light crews. I know that in addition to emergency response, every summer, at least for several summers, they volunteer to go to areas in the United States that were either unserved or underserved with electrical service. A couple years ago, I spoke to some of them, and they had been volunteering in either Arizona or New Mexico on a Native American reservation installing electrical service. So it's not just emergency. They're volunteer just to help people, and I can't thank them enough for that. I had to cancel office hours for last Friday. I thought maybe we should talk about the schedule. I think the three of us have discussed splitting it up and doing every other week, as I think it just seems like it ends up becoming every other week, so we should just probably formalize that. I thought I'd just mention that. And then I have an update on the Orchard, which we'll cover at the end of the meeting, but also I attended the county fair on Saturday at the UU. It was marvelous. I bought a lot of essential household goods at the rummage sale and ate a delicious barbecue cooked by my good friend Dave McManus, and it was a good time all around. Saw a lot of people I knew. It was a beautiful day, and it was really a wonderful community event. So, +1. That's it.
All right. So I also attended the First Responders Barbecue, so thanks very much for that. It was, I think, record attendance this year, so that was fantastic and great opportunity. I wanted to plug Acton, Boxborough, and Littleton are working together to present a Diwali Fest, and that is on October 20th from 12 to 4:30 at the library in Boxborough. And they are planning all sorts of things, music and dance and food and crafts, and they've got the parking situation on lock, so don't let that hold you back. And that's about it for me.
So I also attended the luncheon, and I wanted to thank Park and Rec for Oktoberfest. It seemed to be very well attended. I had to leave pretty early, but the crowds were really filing in when I was on my way out. There are a lot of events coming up in town in the next couple weeks that I wanted to remind people of in addition to Diwali. There's an EV forum hosted by Littleton Electric on the October 15th. The Shaker Lane forums, there's one on October 16th and I believe October 23rd. There's a recycling event in Shirley. I think it's called Reuse Your Recyclables or Recycle Your Reusables or something on the 19th. The Friends of the Library having their book sale on the weekend of the 18th to the 20th. There's a program at the Littleton Lyceum on October 18th, which will be the Neshoba Praying Indians speaking at that. And there's a sustainability forum on October 22nd. So I believe most, if not all of these events should be listed on the town website, so check it out under community events.
And also, flu and COVID vaccine clinics on the 22nd if you register on the website.
Yeah,
so many things.
So many things.
Any updates on the projects we want to get into?
Let's see, I can give you a few quick ones. 36 King Street, we are meeting every week and working to work through some of the change orders that are coming through. You're building in an old, a building that's renovated as a former barn. Obviously, there's a lot of things that do come up, but the team is working hard to narrow that down. If you've gone by recently, you'd see that the building's been painted, new roof, so we're making a lot of progress down there. They're kind of passing along through past the demolition phase to putting things back together on that front. Center and Shattuck Street is moving smoothly. We're hoping to schedule a visit for, in 2, maybe 3 weeks, that would be Select Board, Finance Committee, Council on Aging, Friends, basically so the immediate people who have been contributing, and we'll now give them a chance to see where we are coming along on the project. And finally, MSBA Shaker Lane. We have a couple of meetings coming up on 16th and 23rd, and that is prepping for the presentation that will take place at town meeting. So they also sent out most of you should have gotten postcards informing you of that of those meetings and of the presentation that's going to be happening at town meeting. Did everybody get one? Did you guys? Because okay, all right. Well, some people did not, so we have to.
I got 2.
You got 2.
Maybe
Maybe that's
mine.
where they
He
went.
probably
They
got
went to your
mine.
house. Okay. Okay. We'll follow up on that because that should have been a townwide mailing. So.
And 36 King Street and the Center and Shattuck Street are still slated for completion.
In the March.
In March.
of next year.
Thank you.
You know, it reminded me of something else. Mr. Duggan sent us an update on the facilities manager going through some of the items that were on the 36 King Street docket, like sprinklers that were working that we thought weren't working, and a boiler that wasn't hooked up that we thought we had to replace. And so that was exactly the sort of thing that we wanted to have happen with a facilities manager, someone who could dig into that stuff and reduce the waste, frankly. So that's a win in my book, and I wanted to call that out.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that. And one thing that Ryan and I really appreciate Eric with, Eric is extremely frugal. And we like that. We love that, as a matter of fact. So.
That's great.
Good.
So, yeah, but very efficient and, yeah, hard worker.
Good.
Good. Great stuff.
Mark, I had one thing I just mentioned to Jim. We got the email earlier, but we're going to be meeting, well, some of us that can attend, like tomorrow at 11 at Nevion, one of our businesses up on Foster Street, our medical businesses. The Lieutenant Governor now will be there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Doing a
Yeah,
tour.
it's their 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yes, so, yeah.
They do a lot of great things up there. So.
Okay. Finance Committee, you ready? You have a quorum? Yep.
No, he's out there.
He complains I'm not very close enough, so.
Hello. The Finance Committee agenda for this evening is to, in a joint meeting with Select Board, discuss the FY 25, actually it should be 26, budget process, the 3 to 5 year financial forecast, and the FY 25 budget message, which we'll be sending out to the departments. We had 2 other housekeeping items, and rather than tying everybody up while we did that, I called the meeting to order at 7:04, and we took care of the 2 other agenda items. One was 3 sets of minutes for August 12th, August 21st, and September 17th. And we also approved an invoice so one of our members could attend the Association of Town Finance Committee seminar that's coming up in the next month. So those are the 2 items that we handled offline, but in full disclosure, that's what we've done. So we have a quorum and we're set to go. Mark?
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
Okay. Okay, so just to kick things off, we tried to, per the financial policies that we have, to be able to have this kickoff meeting to the FY 26 budget process. So we wanted to go over with you a little bit where we are at the very early stages of our projections, and to talk to you a little bit about that, and get some of your initial thoughts as we proceed forward and give our guidance to our department heads, both on the capital and operating budget side. So as we move through in that, we'd love to be able to get some feedback from you so that when we send our letters out today to kick that process off formally with our department heads, that will include that guidance. So to begin with, this is our budget projection for FY26. This is a little different than what went out in the original version for the packet. We've made two tweaks with this. One is for under town operating budgets. We've basically, there was an additional expense there for our sewer projects, which includes the collection system and the treatment facility. So right now, the town is the only user of that system as construction's going on. So we are essentially serving as the bank for that project, and we have a period of time before the betterments start coming in that we are sort of leaning heavily on our own resources here to make that happen. So one of the steps we took was to look at or consider alternative funding for us to pay for the sewer debt. We talked about different ways, maybe looking to LALWD potentially for some funding, or alternatively maybe using free cash as a one-time expense where we know we're going to be getting these funds back primarily in FY27 when the betterments are going to be brought forward. Right now we only have about I think we're budgeting $100,000 from the 10% betterment we've assessed to date. So we think we'll be able to find another way to basically straight line our debt requirement for the sewer and reduce our deficit. The other thing that you see in here is that the town once we change the number for the debt and straight line that debt, it looks like our town operating budget increase is 3.85%. So when we do that, we are also trying to have something that's going to match with the schools. So the recommendation here, at least to start off with, is that the school appropriation be brought down to about 3% there. So those are really the two tweaks. It's basically straight lining the sewer debt and starting the school appropriation at 3%. Even with that, we're still looking at about a $2.2 million deficit. We are going to be looking a lot at our revenues and whether or not we can tweak that. We are going to be looking hard at some of our insurance expenses. We'll have our work cut out for us, just like we did last year. So, but it is a lot to do. So, you know, it isn't insurmountable, but it will be a lot of effort as we go through this and as we message to our department heads. You know, we're starting in the hole. So we want to be very forthright with them in terms of what sort of messages we want to send to them, and you know, again, looking for some of the feedback from the Finance Committee and the Select Board on this. Just to give you a quick overview, what you had seen and what we had sent out initially, about 55% of that jump in the FY26 budget. First thing was the debt associated with kicking in the debt on the senior center, which is, of course, being built right across the street, and the purchase of the Indian Hill Music School. So there's that $885,000. One of the other things we're looking at that is potentially with the financing, we'll be able to push that off into FY27. So there's another way that maybe we could knock this down, at least temporarily. And then there's the sewer construction, which we were just talking about. That's the incremental change of what we'd have to cover here at that time. As I mentioned, with the sewer debt service cost accounted for, the town operating budgets line, it gets to be 3.85%. So it gets to be a lot closer to where we'd like to be and where we need to be for this budget. Our other assumptions in this, we just talked about Littleton Schools at 3%. We're budgeting a 5% increase for non-union salaries. It's essentially For the steps, each step as we go through averages 2.5%. If over step 16, it's a 3% increase, as well as, in this case, a 2.5% cost of living increase. We've got 9% increases for health insurance, and all other expenses are budgeted in the projection at 1.5%. So, in terms of what we're looking at, very high level. This is an initial step, a very preliminary start, but we would be potentially looking at pushing the Center on Shattuck Street debt service payment into fiscal year '27, and identify some sort of alternative funding source for the sewer debt, understanding that we will be getting other revenue coming in later once the betterments start getting paid. Because right now, we've got 10% of an estimate for the betterments, and then hopefully this time next year, where the project will be essentially complete, we'll know what the total cost is, and then assess the 90% on the actual cost of the project and start getting revenue in of substance to help pay this off. I would also note that I think we paid about $1.5 million already into the project, so we're going to find ways to work with LALWD that the town get that money back. That's something Steve Venuti's been adamant about, and we agree that, as we have essentially started the project up and provided that initial funding, we also want to see that come back to us as well on the back end. So that's where we are right now at this point in the process. Again, we're going to be sending out our guidance letters to department heads, I just kind of open it up to the Select Board and Finance Committee as to your thoughts of where we are.
So the difference between the numbers in the packet and what you presented is the sewer debt not being in there in the lower school appropriation?
That's right.
So that counts for the 4 million, 4 plus to the 2.2?
Right, it's roughly, with those changes, it's a $1.9 million shift.
Okay.
With those changes being out of balance by 2.2 million, which sounds horrific, but for this time of year, that's kind of where we generally are. So that's not too terrifying, except that last year we did, it seemed, a bunch of kind of one-time things to get us over the hump that won't be available this year. So while the starting point isn't so horrible, some of our, we've kind of looked in all the easy seat cushions. So it's just, I know you know this.
Yep, yeah, that's right, and that's part of how with the guidance too, in terms of the things that we relay to department heads too, in terms of new positions, that cost of living, and these are all the things that we should be thinking about in terms of when the letter goes out to them. What do we want to provide for parameters for them?
Sure.
Within that context.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was, a couple things under the seat cushion that I think we really need to look at hard is we have two buildings that we purchased, and they're coming up for resale, correct? So the Shattuck Street building right next door, and where the sewer treatment is going, there's a home there. So there's potentially a very significant recoupment of money there. I don't know, the timelines probably work, hopefully, about right, but that cost of housing right now, I think that's something that, I don't know if you've looked at.
I would tell you that, Gary, we absolutely have that in mind. I don't think we'll see much of a benefit for that in the FY26 budget, because we'd have to be making certain assumptions about what the sale price might be.
Right.
But what we would, the initial thinking and conversations that I've had with Steve Venuti, were thinking about taking the proceeds from that sale and then applying it against the debt service for the Center on Shattuck Street. Not doing it all in 1 year, but spreading it out. But spreading it out for us so that it helps sort of take some of the shaves the peak down a little bit for us.
And the other one is, I'll say it, the 5% increase baked into the non-union salaries is, the 2.5% and the 3% on top of the COLA. That number is built in to be flexible. And I know this town has gone through very lean years where there was 0% on some of the stuff, which I absolutely would not want to get back to, but I think there may be some flexibility in there if we are forced to do it. I think that's why that number was plugged in, because we were in a very much healthier situation. So I want to make sure, but I don't think that's going to affect this number too significantly, one way or the other. And what we haven't talked about is, I know you've got numbers baked in for the union contracts, which typically aren't going to save us money.
No.
But hopefully, they come in where we need them to for this, so.
Yeah.
That's all I can think. That's.
So another thing, I just wonder, cutting the, or I'll just say, changing the school budget increase to 3%, I imagine we'll get some pushback. So, I mean, of course, we're going to get pushback. So that number, it might be 3%, it might be 3-point-something%. I mean, it's just, it's early days, but that, I wouldn't, that's certainly not what it's going to end up as.
The line item for capital planning and warrant articles goes from 3.2 to almost 7 million. What's that? And then I see in the 5-year plan, it hovers between 1 and 5. I'm curious how that forecast is being made, especially for 25.
So the 20, where's the capital warrant?
Capital
Okay.
planning
So it's actually,
warrant
so that's actually going down. So that, probably because we haven't necessarily fleshed out what those warrant articles are just yet. So when we eventually put those in, there'll be funding from revenue, from free cash, and then the corresponding number to change. So that probably will go up, but we just haven't, we haven't actually fleshed out what that capital plan is. So it's.
Well, but I guess I was saying, as an expense of almost double what it is this year, how do you make the forecast that that expense is going to double?
I think, Matthew, if I'm reading it right, it's going from FY25 to FY26, so it's actually going down, I think is what.
Well, from 24 to 25, it's going from 3.2 to 6.9 in my packet.
Okay. So I was just looking at the version on the.
What does it say on the? What does it
But
say?
he's right, it's going to 3.5, and we're already in fiscal year 25.
I see. It's going, okay.
Right.
It's going to 3.5, got it.
But then it's going back up in 27.
And then it's going back up. So I guess I'm just asking, like, how you come up with that number.
Right. I think I'd have to look at it, because the model is a complex thing, so that I don't know that offhand. But for the most part, what you're seeing in the warrant articles is again a corresponding piece that we'll put in the revenue side of things when we finish that up. So it should be at the end relatively budget neutral. But I'll follow up with that and get you a response.
If you actually look at the budget, one of the big problems is the total revenue is down because we took so much money from other sources in the past. So it's not, well, I don't think we're like taking less from receipts. We took more from the undesignated fund balance and things that boosted in 25. So.
Well,
Like the stabilization
I think
fund.
going forward, I mean, this year will be what it is. I mean, we're going to have to grind through it. But the next couple of years, I really think we need to spend a little more time sort of projecting those 2 years because of the major impact of the sewer. If we have to eat another 1.8 or almost $2 million of debt
In year 2.
2 years out and 3 years out, because the flow isn't coming into the system to pay for the operating side of things, we'll not only have debt, but we'll have an increase to the operating side of that budget. And I don't know what that is, but it's got to be a heck of a lot more than we're paying now. So I really think we need to get together with Nick and try to flesh that out as best we can. I understand the betterments are going to help with the debt, But at the same time, that might be helping the operating side's going to go up. And where does that all come? And until 550 King Street really comes on, the volume isn't there to really give the town a break. So, you know, modeling that for the next 3 years, I think, is really crucial. I mean, I'll spend whatever time anybody wants to spend on it with Nick and his crew, but that's a continuing concern going forward. I mean, you know, we can get through 1 year by hook or by crook, but if it continues to roll forward, that's when it gets really tough. So.
So I would suggest that we have the planning board with us for that meeting as well. I think it's important for us to understand what they're expecting out of the timeline for 550 King Street, so that we can see, so that we can factor in revenue.
And it may be just assumptions at that point.
Sure.
But at least you can say, well, if this happens, it looks like this. If that happens, it looks like this. You know, we'll be in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
But without that model, we're really kind of flying blind here.
Yeah, that's a great point, Karen. The other thing I wonder, just in terms of the message on the capital side, I mean, given that we're looking at, for Shaker, you know, an exclusion, what kind of message do we want to give to the departments in terms of other capital? I mean, it's not like we can say, well, we're doing Shaker, so no other capital, and that's unrealistic, but I think the town would want us to be pretty tight on capital spending. So it's not like we've been loose, but.
You know, and there's also a cost, Brian, by letting things that, you know, if there's pieces of equipment or what have you that, you know, that need to be replaced and waiting too long for that. So, you know, it's always a balance, and, you know, I think we're going to be looking this year in terms of what's proposed with, you know, even a sharper pencil, if you will, to determine, you know, whether or not things might be able to be put off for another year or two. So there's always, I think it was, you know, Tim who said at town meeting, someone asked at town meetings, like, when is the spending ever going to stop? And his answer was honest, that never, because it's just that we have assets out there that are in continual need of repair, and, you know, to extend the useful life of those assets. We've got some other big scale projects coming along, like the replacement of the high school roof, which is coming up, and figuring out, you know, how that's going to be funded. So there's a lot of questions, but also other tools that maybe we can use. So it has to be, you know, it's a good point. It's something we really need to be looking at
And I think
sharply.
Sorry, but I think also to Fred's point, the more we can do multi-year planning, the better.
And we're all aware, I mean, we're talking vehicle, fire engines.
Right.
Yeah, that's another piece.
We know two that are, we're borrowing a fire engine right now.
Right,
So
right.
that's something and those things that's not going to go away, and it's not going to get better. We know that. So those are other items that we have to take care of sooner than later. It's not, so.
I agree.
The school is a monster that's going to happen in an override. So yes, we continue to be frugal the best we can and model this, but you almost have to take that as a separate item completely from all of these other things that are the yearly capital items that we have in front of us that we've known, because there's nothing we can do with the school besides override it, and here's the effect on the taxpayer if you vote yes. We're going to be getting a flood of information over the next year, 2 years, on what that looks like. I know there's going to be a lot of meetings, a lot of charrettes, discussions, but so that'll be some tough decisions the town has to make, and I know there's a lot of discussion on how to get that number down and how to work that the best we can. But I hate to see those type of things, massive building projects, push off some of the maintenance things. So I think that's what got us into trouble here when we're talking about roof repair and things like that. We know these things are coming, and now we have a facilities manager that's going to really highlight. We're probably going to probably have him come in and show us his first look evaluation of needed things. So those are things I think that I'm not going to say they take priority, but those aren't surprises. Nothing there should be surprising us. I mean, a fire engine breaking early surprises us. And the repair costs just get out of hand, or we have to purchase another one. But we've got to get better, certainly with fleet expectations, where a vehicle now costs 10 times what it did 10 years ago. But the school one, I hate to have it compete, but I know in a taxpayer, in your wallet, it is competing. But there are things that have to be done, and they're going to always have to be done.
Oh, I agree. I just lean more towards the year-to-year have-tos versus Shaker, because the town could say no.
Right, and the town can say no to any of these things.
Right.
I mean, if we need a vehicle that's in disrepair, they can say no. But there's definitely a difference to me in my mind on how we can how we have to view these things, because we know, and that's why we hired a facilities manager. Finally, we got one, and there's going to be a rude awakening on. We have years and years of building maintenance, infrastructure, and things like that have just kind of, we haven't had an expert.
If I could, Gary, those are good points. I think we've already had conversations with our new facilities manager in terms of, what sort of things should we be considering as we develop our capital plan with him, and he's going to be looking at things we hadn't necessarily been looking at previously. And then, the other part of it being with the Shaker Lane School, in terms of projections and everything that we're doing, yes, it'll likely be an exclusion, but it also, while the money's excluded, it still impacts the taxpayer and how we think about what this means for our budget. And it's definitely something that's going to cast a broad shadow for us as we think about how we approach the budget in the next few years.
Yeah. And what's coming off that? I don't know what we have. Something we haven't discussed. I know we're not into those weeds yet. But over the next 5 years, what's coming off our?
Right. We were just looking at that earlier today, and it does. It is going down. We're sort of at a peak period right now.
We knew that. We knew
in terms of debt, which is good. It's starting to go down, but there are also, there are other needs. DPW also just started, is starting to do a facilities review. The cemetery is doing something similar to get an RFP out. So, as Tim Goddard said at town meeting, when does it end? And the answer is, it doesn't. And it really should, because it's our obligation, just like any homeowner has, to be able to maintain their assets to extend their useful life. That's really where, how it's being approached. So
back to what Fred was saying, I think the meeting with Nick is extremely important, so we can actually project both the town debt load, what we're paying for.
Where it's such a big part of it, right?
Right, and the operation load, because while, if we're the only user, we're paying 100% of the operating costs, basically. So we kind of need to know projections going forward on what that looks like sooner rather than later for several years.
If we're carrying it for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, it's a different scenario. And, it's worth taking a shot at.
Yeah. So. Other questions?
Nope. Good. Glad we're doing this.
good.
The first look is always scary. I know that.
Yeah.
We'll get through it.
Okay, I think the next item we had up was, there was some discussion, when the last meeting we had, the Finance Committee and the Select Board, to discuss Article 5, this is adult use marijuana establishments, so I think Jeff and Maren are here to speak to that. Let's see if I can get your slides up.
So we're not doing the 3 to 5 year? We're not, I'm sorry. Did I miss something? We're not doing the 3 to 5 year plan, or?
So there was, so we had the 3 to 5 year plan that we had in the packet. So I do have that slide. I thought that we were squared away, so we were, you know.
Okay, I guess
Okay, do you want to go back to it?
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
We can wrap back around for it after.
So that's pretty, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So as you all know, Littleton is a marijuana town. Currently, we have 2 retail establishments, one of which is operating. We have a lab, and we have a manufacturer of, marijuana products, but not leaf products, and we have a cultivator. And a great amount of time, our board has spent a great amount of time on the cultivation aspect of the businesses in town, and primarily with massive citizen complaints. And this came about in the last couple of years because Sanctuary Medicinals sought to do an addition to their facility. And it turns out this addition was to address some of these complaints, not to increase the capacity of their growing. However, during that process, we heard a lot from people in town. And so this article, while it has several purposes, one of which is to conform our bylaw with the Cannabis Control Commission, which is continually changing things. Primarily, it's a way of seeking to limit within state law and within our commitments as a cannabis community further cultivation in town. And our legal counsel, who has a specialist in cannabis law, identified the strategy for this, and we would like to extend the strategy to, and this is available through town meeting. However, we also have the option of bringing a ballot to the entire town, which we would like to do in the spring. So, in the meantime, we would like to have this article to limit these cultivation, to further cultivate. Right now, the way the bylaw is written, we have an unlimited number of cultivation sites that could potentially be permitted. It's not to say that there are not people beating on our doors to do it, but over the years, I've talked to other towns, and they have similar problems. And ironically, the worst ones are the outdoor cultivation, which apparently, and these problems are with odor. And people in their homes who are oppressed by odor. And so we paid a lot of attention to that issue, and the bylaw we're proposing does not specifically specify odor control, but it does indicate, because that will be changing, the technology will be changing, but it does talk about state-of-the-art odor control. We had presentations by odor control experts, which was pretty interesting. It's a difficult subject because there's, it's sort of vaporous, how do you measure it, this, that, and the other thing. So anyway, that's the purpose. So 2 aspects to it: housekeeping for the bylaw to conform with state law as currently promoted, and to limit cultivation in town. Now, please don't ask me legalistic questions. It's extremely complicated, and I just want to give you and the town meeting the overall, the overall thrust of what we are attempting to do with this article.
A question then. We have a 10-page article with no change bars. We have no idea what this is.
With no which?
No change bars. We have no idea what you're changing.
Right, so for public outreach, all the information is posted to the planning board page, including a red line that would show exactly what the changes are. There's so many changes, it made more sense to delete and then add the new information. So that information is available on the planning board website. There's a special page. What also is on the website is this slide presentation that gives a brief overview of, what the planning board is proposing, and then a 2-page summary of each of the actions that are listed in the town meeting report.
Okay, I just think it's unrealistic to expect town meeting members to accept, well, you should have gone to our webpage. They're going to be looking at this.
I think it's unrealistic to ask town meeting members to parse a highly legalistic bylaw.
Yeah, I was against the first reading of this. I'm against it now. I mean, you talk about how we go into odor control and things like that. Well, you just killed any chance, Stephen, odor control, because you're saying that we can only have one cultivator in town, which already exists. So you've just snuffed that entire business out of any potential growth in that industry. So that 173-198, the limitations, there's so much in this article that I like, and then that's the one that I just can't get my arms around, limiting the number of marijuana cultivators in town to 1, limited to craft marijuana cooperatives to 1. We can go, there's a bunch of these, and then to the no delivery of marijuana products, which I don't know where that came from, like the craft of it, because people, when they think of it, well, of course not. We don't want people going around just, but what about the people that are, that are suffering from an illness and they need stuff brought to their house? I just think it's so restrictive that we are reacting. This is a knee-jerk reaction, a lot of this. I know.
It's not a knee-jerk, it's a jerk based on people who show up to our meetings.
It is, and I know that, I know the neighborhood you're talking about, and it's the most unfortunate situation that industry moved into a neighborhood of houses. It's horrible. And that's what we could get in front of. I just think restricting this to 1 takes out, like I had mentioned in our last meeting, putting a cultivation site down Monarch Drive way in the back. Perfect. The smell's not going to go through, 30 acres of woods. That's just me personally, and if this goes too, I will vote against it, but that's just me, as a citizen. But as the business side of the town, I just think this is too restrictive for me to approve or to recommend. That's my opinion on it, and I have read through it, and when I saw that one paragraph of all the restrictions, I was like, my goodness, what are we doing? We're just basically saying what we have is what you got, period, no more, nothing else, and I don't agree with it. That's all.
Okay.
So thank you for the article.
That's not what we're hearing from people who come to our meetings.
I would understand, and I understand the people that would come to your meetings, what they're dealing with in their neighborhood, but this isn't going to necessarily fix their neighborhood. Some of it is, that's the part that I kind of agree with, some of the restrictions you're putting on and the stuff, the new technologies that Mr. Sanders brought up at the last town meeting and things like that. But I just don't agree with the other side of it, that's all. So.
Okay.
Right, and as a zoning bylaw process, it would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting in order to pass.
But we feel strongly that we need to bring this before the town because we've had such, and whether it passes or not, whatever, but we've had such an outpouring of comment and concern about this issue.
I have a question on the map. Can you push up the... So This says it's the non-retail adult use. So I assume there's a retail adult use one that's different. Is
Well,
that correct?
There's an existing retail adult use district that's already been
Okay.
established.
So so retail just means selling like collective or those, or we have one retail business, we have more retail?
We have one.
And
we can have
one more that we're.
Okay, because this district doesn't include where our existing marijuana establishments are. MRM is outside of this district.
MRM is not a retail.
It's a marijuana processing thing.
It is,
for
but it's not a retail.
But this is non-retail.
Okay.
It's within the district.
No, they're outside, no, they're on the other side of Air Road. They're between the Air Road and the railroad tracks. They're outside of the
Yep,
district.
you're correct.
That's a good point.
So it would become pre-existing non-conforming.
But, okay, so if they're asking for a permit to do something else, then they couldn't do that because they're outside of the district? I mean, they keep asking for, they've expanded from what they started with to 2 or 3 others. I don't know why we picked this, I don't understand why the retail and the non-retail don't have more, why the retail isn't a subset of the non-retail versus the other way around.
It's a timing issue. The non-retail district is all of the industrial A property in Littleton, plus the police station site. The only industrial A property that was excluded is the Newtown Road, the 550 Newtown Road site.
But Mark, also, so I'm assuming that's 495 Route 2, where all the big district is. We literally just rezoned that.
Well, we
No.
rezoned one parcel.
But,
Not rezoned, but added another
Right.
overlay district.
right, so how does that affect, this is because it's industrial that you can even consider it. We put a bunch of apartment complexes in there. That becomes a district that, I mean, I'm just not sure. That looks like it's something that would have happened with pre-existing zoning before the MBTA communities was enacted. It's just another issue I have with it. We're trying to get it away from the residents, but we're putting, that district right there, we just zoned for housing, basically, mixed use, but housing, so I have trouble with this. And I don't want to rain on everybody's decisions on how we want to go forward with this, and I recognize the pressure that you guys have been under for a couple of years now, with our existing cultivator especially. But by all other accounts, the other businesses have been complaintless, I guess if you will. So.
Well, we had people showing up at the hearings for those also.
So is there a requirement that the district has to be a certain distance from the school? Because that little stub down Russell Street looks awfully close to the school.
We've talked about that also.
Yeah, there are setback requirements
Yeah.
for each proposal. But those aren't reflected in, those are separate requirements from setting the district itself.
So does that mean the map isn't accurate if those requirements?
The map doesn't reflect any anticipated applications. When an application comes in, they would have to show that they are proper distance from schools, daycare centers, areas where children congregate at the time of their application.
Okay.
The original, an example of that is the original application for the collective was on a site that the map showed it was allowed. However, it was within 500 feet of a park. So, they had to identify that. And they moved their site.
Okay. So in the future, do we expect a thing to update the retail district map?
I didn't hear a request from the planning board to do so.
It's the existing retail map.
Okay. I still don't understand why the retail map would be larger than the non-retail, but okay.
We're under the advice of town council for all of this matter. And anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, can you talk to me a little bit about the thought process of putting both these major purposes into one article versus separating them out into two different articles?
I don't know that we had a thought of separating them out. We feel that they're linked.
But you've got a lot of housekeeping in here that will go down with the ship, so to speak. If folks have problems with the other aspects.
Once again, we are guided by feedback we have.
Sure.
Got
I'm
it.
just asking you to share with me what the thought process was. This isn't a...
I don't think we ever considered separating them.
Okay.
It's just a marijuana, it's a one big marijuana pack of info in
Okay.
action.
That's an answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. In 173, 198B, it says the number of delivery licenses shall not exceed 2, but then in 173, 198G, it seems to imply that there aren't any.
Okay. We'll bring it up with the council. It seems to imply, I can't.
Look, if you can't explain to us, then I think you've got, let me finish the sentence, Joe. If you can't explain it to us, then I think you have no real chance of explaining it on town floor. So, I think we are trying to be helpful and suggest that you modify it so you don't get just voted down in town meeting. But do what you will.
We're past the time frame for modifications at this point.
If the town is interested in nurturing marijuana businesses, we will be voted down. That's fine. We're promoting this because we have not had that experience.
So, can I ask, the update to the cannabis regulations, what happens if we don't pass that? Are there ramifications from the state?
Not at this point. Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Just didn't, my recommendation to the board was if you're looking at limiting the number of marijuana facilities, don't dig into the bylaw without also doing the updates.
Okay. But we're not out of compliance with something if we don't do the updates?
It's a little confusing, but not out of compliance.
Okay, thank you.
The whole commission is in disarray at the
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
We're well aware.
And one thing we did consider was putting it off until they arrayed themselves again, but it wasn't suggested to us that that was the thing to do.
Okay.
You said that you wanted to bring this as a ballot question. What would be different?
So the ballot question would absolutely limit cultivation, not just at one. It would not affect the existing business because that would be grandfathered. But it would be, but no further cultivation sites would be allowed in town.
Just on that one point would be the ballot question?
Yes.
Not all this, okay.
Yeah, and that is, once again, advice of town council, that was a ballot issue, not a, and we felt, you talked about the linking of the housekeeping with the cultivation. It was felt that there could be applications for cultivation in the next period of time, and we wanted to preclude that.
So if this passed, we wouldn't have a need for the ballot question because it would be covered in this?
No, it would be, it's a good question.
It would be, that would be, the planning board had laid out a two-town meeting strategy, see how the process went at this town meeting with limiting the number of cultivators to the 4 different types. And then if that passes, then consider for May town meeting a separate article that limits the number of cultivators to 0, but that would also require a ballot question to do that part of it.
Oh, so it would be to limit it to 0 grandfathering in the wet, okay, I see.
To me, as opposed to rezoning the existing one that we have a problem with, evidently, we don't like where it is. That's the problem. That, to me, so we're addressing it by, there'll be no more cultivators in the entire town. I can't get by it.
Well, Gary.
I can't get by it.
You said problem.
Yeah.
It's not, take this away. It is a problem.
Listen, I live over there.
Okay.
So, and it's not a horrible smell for me. I catch it every now and then, but I don't want to get into that part of it because it's like if I live next to a Chinese restaurant or I live next to X, the smell would probably get to you after a while. You'd be like, I can't stand the smell. But yes, I know that the neighborhood, and they've all talked to each and every one of us probably at one point or another that live a lot closer. But I still think that's the issue and that's the challenge that we are trying to address. And this Warren article, to me, addresses a whole lot of things futuristic, but all because of one issue that we're dealing with, which is they're in a bad spot unless there was an absolute something out there that could just stop the smell. Because other than the smell, we don't have really traffic issues there?
No.
Right?
There are no other
So it's
complaints. And the existing, and
frustrating.
the addition to the facility is designed to allay that smell, whether it does or not. We'll see.
So, whether or not I agree with Gary's point on this or not, if you should be prepared if someone at town meeting says we want to eliminate the restriction, but you still want to pass the cleanup, what that would do, does that just only like 173, 198, the limitations, or are there other things that would be affected? I'm not recommending we do that. I'm recommending you be prepared for someone to do that.
To eliminate the restriction from...
If you want to say, we're not limiting the number of grow facilities, but you still want to pass the cleanup, right, what would that bylaw look like? To Karen's point, if we were going to 2, what it would look like, so that you can make progress even if you're not getting the final result.
I'm not sure that would be the progress we were looking for.
Well, it at least gets you up to date with whatever the current regulations are. And I agree it's not what your end goal is, but it's still moving, it's still the cleanup.
Moves the needle a little bit.
Yes, so.
Yeah, we can certainly ask the question of town council and see if that's possible for fall town meeting. My guess is it's not, given where we are in the hearing
No,
process.
I'm not suggesting,
But
yeah.
feedback that the town will get based on, whatever town meeting says, the discussion there and the vote there will help inform the planning board on how to move forward.
I mean, I agree with that answer too, because I think that people, if that's the mood of town meeting, or that's if that's what town meeting finds, then we, would not go forward with the cultivation.
No, what I'm saying is there's 2 purposes to this, and
Right.
one is regardless of whatever the cultivation you agree with or not. One is just to clean up the language. So if we wanted to do that, we should know what that looks like versus if we want to limit it as well.
In other words, if there's something on the floor,
Right.
we've seen this happen before with town council kind of get stuck and they're like, I guess town council needs to be prepared for that possibly happening, right? Because it's such a large article that there's a potential that it could be, someone could try to break it up.
Right.
Right? So I just think they should be aware that that's something that could happen there because we've seen it in the past, for sure. But that's...
Terry, to your point, if this passed exactly as it is, would it do anything about the smell?
Nothing.
Okay, so we have a problem, and we have a bylaw that doesn't seem to do anything about the current problem, but it prevents there another problem. But this bylaw, it seems, wouldn't give any relief to the people who are affected by the current problem, unless I'm misunderstanding.
Exactly. Zoning cannot do that.
Okay.
And this bylaw is informed by trying to give that neighborhood relief through the special permit process that they had to go through to get their building added on to. We had detailed testimony from experts and et cetera, and how the building worked and, you know, what caused the odor. And it's just, sometimes it's just a matter of opening a door. And if it's in a neighborhood that, anyway, so this is informed by that experience.
So I have a quick question. There are probably other towns that have similar problems with the cultivation and the establishment they have. So what are they doing do they have similar problems and they're solving in some way?
Have similar problems, not necessarily being solved.
Yeah, and they are dealing with problems. Especially, it turns out, the outdoor grows are the big problem.
So in other words, are they restricting the way we?
Because if you have an outdoor grow, you can't mitigate the odor. There's no HVAC, there's no filtering, there's no control. And some of the towns further west have big outdoor grow cultivation. I highly doubt that this would be a problem in Littleton, but you never know.
I mean, I guess I have one more question. I guess it's direct that you don't have to answer, but if the current existing cultivator did not have a smell issue, I would have to say 90% of that article wouldn't. There'd be no. You'd be presenting an article to clean up and to match a lot of the state stuff. We wouldn't have. I don't know why. Like, where would the planning board come up with the restrictive part?
Because we want to restrict cultivation in Littleton. So, I mean, let's be fair. That's the goal of the article, and you can disagree with it. The town should have a chance of judging or deciding what they want to do about that.
I agree with that, but it's not just about that. You have A through H of what it restricts, and cultivates just one of those things. So it's a lot more than that, and that's I know you guys put a lot of work into it, but I'm having trouble.
I think that it's every person's going to have to decide their relationship to marijuana businesses in town.
So I have, going back to the map, I know I'm beating this up. I'm looking at the 2014 map, and it looks like the only difference is that we took out part of 550 King Street. Is that correct?
That was rezoned, correct. Well, yes, that's correct.
So I still don't understand how the businesses that are there are effectively in the marijuana district, because they're not in this picture or in the current picture.
Well,
So we might want to revisit that one, just to be clear.
Well, was there a retail versus non-retail, or? Well, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, George.
Does anyone? Okay, Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George Sanders, 672 Great Ruin. We have the right to agree to disagree. First of all, I wrote 2 letters to the CCC. And I pointed out to them, I sent a copy to the select board with regards to this industry was not properly vetted. They never thought about the smell of what was going to happen with this product. There's nothing that they have up there that talk anything about the smell. Now, the smell is affecting the people, whether it's over here or whether it's over there. Once it gets in the environment it depends on the wind. North, east, west, or south. It depends on the speed that it's going. Sometimes it can break it up before it gets from point A to point B. But the thing I want to say here tonight is that the planning board is being proactive based on the fact of what citizens have came before the committee and told them what is going on with their household in the area that they're living with this coming down there. So, I'm going to tell you, there's no reason why, and I get a hearing here tonight that seemed like maybe we want more of the industry in the town of Littleton. And that's not what the people are wanting. They want less in this town. The same way it was with the gun situation in this town. The element of surprise, they all find out that how many gun dealers we had in this town. And nobody knew. That sort of kind of raised people's eyebrows with regards to this marijuana, and people are not rushing in here wanting to get a permit to open up. So if we want to curb it, if the people want to curb it, and we have a committee has had hearings and have collected this information time after time, and I'll tell you frankly, I disagreed with the planning board giving the extension to expand. When you expand, you know what you do? You increase. They can say whatever they want to. Once they got it in there and they got the committee, that was a mistake. I told the CC about it. I'm looking to get an answer from them because I've given them a little time. I'm going to send a follow-up to them because there are a lot of things that are going on with that industry. They have no idea. They got people up there have no idea about control of an instrument here where it produces something and it gets out and they don't even say nothing about it. There's a reason why they have put this together and came up, and thank God they did pick up the smell of the current problem that we have going on here. I told them how to put it in. But they, who am I? I'm just George Sanders, see? This old backward country boy. But don't be fooled by that. I know a little bit about this industry in terms of controlling gases. And when they get into the environment, you can't control it. You control it before it gets into the environment. And this is where you put in a negative pressure system in there. Yeah, that will get rid of the smell. And you're absolutely right, Gary, that if they got rid of the smell, that document would probably be down to 10% of what it is today. But because they can't put in there and tell them how to do it, this is the same thing that I told the CCC. You need to have that in place. And I also told them about the host agreement. It needs to be in a host agreement and hold these people liable. And Department of Environmental Protection and the EPA. The EPA, you know what the EPA director in Massachusetts told me? He said, Mr. Sanders, we do not want to get into this because why? It's illegal under the federal government. The state has approved it, so they told me that the CCC and the DEP is the appropriate place for you to get answer, Mr. Sanders, and we're going to forward this information over to them and tell them that. So what we have here, we got an element at the state really truly don't know what's going on. And they can't come to agree as to what is what because they don't have no experts in there telling them what needs to be done, Mr. Chairman. And what we're trying to do here is trying to help ourselves here by limiting the amount of more elements that come in, and suppose they don't have to do anything either about the control, and then it's over here now, and it's over there now, and people complaining. We want to try to help the people that are in the community where this is happening. And I say to you, you may be against it. I'm gonna get my time on the floor at the town meeting, and I'm gonna tell the American people in the town of Littleton, if you want to do something, pass it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further? Go ahead.
I'm just, any other comments? Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Second motion to adjourn.
Do you want to go back to the 5-year plan?
Yeah,
real
George,
quick?
I mean,
So,
Fred, we don't want to skip that.
Just,
I want to
can you
look at
pull that back up, real?
Yep, we're doing it now. Right. So we also did, we back to the 5-year projection?
Yeah.
So, okay, so we threw that in the back. So this was based on the prior numbers that were in the packet, but let's get to it. So that, so when we start looking out based on the prior figures, we're looking at deficits of about 3.7 million in FY27, 4.6 in FY28, 5.8 million in FY29, and about 6.9 million in FY30. So, you know, this is part of our obligation to the FinCom in terms of when we review every year. We know this year is going to pose its challenge, and you know, as we look forward, there are going to be other continued pressures as well.
Just to my earlier comment on the sewer, just sort of staying with that, what assumptions have you plugged in for, you know, 27, 28,
Yeah,
29 on
Fred, it's fairly light right now. Yeah, it's fairly light right now in terms of what monies we're going to be starting to get back on the betterments. So that probably has added to some of this deficit as well. So we are making presumptions, but it isn't. You know, it probably right now isn't as heavy because we don't know exactly what the pacing will be from this, which is a good reason as to why you're wanting to have that meeting with Nick and the select board and the planning board. Makes some sense.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, do we have, I mean, I said earlier, you know, 2 and change million, we can work with. 6.5.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a train coming down the tracks at us, or what's our thoughts about not being on the track or moving the track or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of this too is based upon, you know, our knowings for expenses, but we also know that there's a lot of questions in terms of the revenue. New
growth isn't.
New growth is kind of as a baseline here, fairly basic, but we know that you know, hopefully with 550 King Street,
Northern Bank,
and Northern Bank, 410, you know, the sewer, with all the expenses that we're taking up on the sewer side of things, it is, you know, the other side of that is that there will be, you know, hopefully more fill-in with that, and there will be more new growth from that.
So what we have here, Ryan, is basically run rate extrapolated.
I think that's fair.
And I think, you know, using the sewer as an example, with hopefully the new growth coming in on top of it, you know, the further out you go, clearly the foggier the fog bank gets, right?
Right.
But at least we could make some assumptions and say that, you know, if 550 comes on in 6 years or 7 years or 8 years, it looks like this. If the sewer starts up next fall and it's running at 5% capacity, what does the operating budget look like? And if it's running at 50% or 60% or 7, what does the operating budget look like? And plug those two numbers in, at least it would give us some semblance of confidence going forward. Now, if 550 doesn't come through, we're all in a lot of trouble. If it accelerates, we're in a really good place. So I think looking at those two things could either give us some comfort in your number or discomfort in your number. So the modeling, and obviously we'd have to get the assessors involved, and as on the revenue side, as well as Nick on the expense side of the of that sewer project. So.
And we know too, Fred, when we look back and see what the impacts of when the point came on, and you know what that looked like in terms of new growth, and how that really helped the community a great deal. So we're looking at something here of at least similar scope, if not greater. So it's we don't know exactly when all that's going to hit, but we're hopeful that we will see the benefits of the investments that we're making on the sewer system.
Yeah, I think that, and really putting more effort into the capital side, because we've got high school roofs coming. Russell Street isn't a heck of a lot further behind than that. It's what is that getting to be? That's got to be 17, 18 years old at this point. So just looking at those big ticket items, fire department, you can't buy a truck for less than $1 million now. So, I mean, if we have to start buying fire trucks, what does that do to us? DPW. We have to build a DPW barn. What the hell does that do to us? So I don't want to get down into the weeds on these models, but at least the really big ticket items that can move the needle on us.
I have to believe that, sure, Northern Bacon trust the property there, but I bet if we got them in here, or, I mean, I don't know if they've been in front of the planning board recently, to include the Poli companies, but if they are giving, their investors need to know when their projects are going to start and when they're going to finish. It's a huge part of the investment. So they must be briefing somebody on that timeline, but I don't think our boards have seen it. In other words, the easy answer is we're just waiting on the sewer. Okay, you're waiting on the sewer to what? And I know that it's a tiered, they have shown that much, the tiered build out. But there's a realistic answer in there, and it's just a matter of light and water. The sewer timeline, I think it's locked in. We know when it is. We literally can probably get it down to at least a quarter of 1 year of when it's going to be turned on, right? I mean, so, okay, Poli, what does that mean to you? What's your staged piece on that timeline? That would give us almost exactly, because we're talking 66% of this.
And, the sooner we can get, even if it's the two big buildings up there hooked in, that's something.
It is.
And then if he builds hotels or whatever else he's doing there.
That's all bonus at the end of this, right? Rainbow, if you will.
Yeah.
But getting there is a, like you said, we're footing a bill, but we don't know how much.
And again, modeling is modeling, but at least it would give us a comfort set, more than I certainly have now.
Wouldn't let us de-risk. I think we're needing to, I mean, our whole gig is risk, and looking out 5 years and seeing a $6.5 million deficit, we need some comfort, because if that were to come to pass, there ain't enough seat cushions for 6.5 million, and I'm not going to say that O word.
But that's realistic. I mean, look at all the communities around us are facing that. We're trying to fend that off.
Right.
I mean, Air's been overriding their fire engines forever. That's just how they purchase their vehicles. We don't want to be that community that does things like that, but we're trying to stay ahead of it. And when you're looking out at a 5-10-year plan,
Well, realistically, we'd have another hotel in town now if
yeah,
the septic system was built properly
yeah, great.
up at the point. So, I mean, that's the kind of leverage, you know what we make on the hotel, right? I mean, that's the kind of leverage having the sewer system in place gets us. And the sooner we can get that, the better off we're going to be.
So we should request a joint meeting with the planning board and have a little Polly presentation on their timelines?
I mean,
Once we lock in Nick's timeline, I mean, I'm assuming his is much,
Well, we should do, yeah, I think they're independent, but yeah, we
Yeah.
need both.
because then I mean, that way we don't just get the answer of, well, whenever they're done with the sewer, we'll start building, you know. I mean, he's got to know. The investors have to know. There's no way he's getting money for that without
Spring of 25.
spring of
Spring of 25.
25.
Right.
Okay, well, there's,
And then the sewer is going to be, then the sewer will be completed in a year from now.
I mean, that's good news.
I mean, that's
It's-
been,
So, but that's just the piece of the news that's in the ground, not making us any money until this whole building
Right,
starts.
that's why I think you have to build the model and with, you know, with whatever number of assumptions, but
All right, we can dig into that. I think that's outside the, I guess, normal budget process. Those are things we're going to have to.
You know, there's one thing that I would like to drill down into eventually is my understanding is that it doesn't count as new revenue at IBM until we've sort of filled the hole that IBM left, right? So with the signing of the lease and the lease going in phases, can we figure out when we're going to be dug out of that hole and when we can expect to see new revenue just out of the IBM building?
So you said the lease of the party who just signed up? Okay.
75,000, yeah, over the 3 years of getting to 70,000 square feet.
Yeah, so based on what we expect them to be paying in, is it gonna be, year 1, year 2, year 3, not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's one number we could put together pretty easily.
And even if we got a number that looked like, what happens if they lease those buildings that within the next 2 years are completely leased out? That's a huge thing too, right? That would be the equivalent to IBM being there at that point, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, we get into a slippery slope when we sit there and we count our chickens before
No,
they're
I-
hatched, and I would hate to establish those
no,
expectations.
these guys have been great about not.
No, but I think Ryan is correct in what he's, in having it, a soft presence in here when you're looking at the debt of $6.5 million out there. And as we progress on the revenue side, you're going to see those numbers will come down. And we're going to continue to come down. But for us to sit here and say, well, let's plug this, let's do a scenario there. When's that going to start? When's this going to start? We could sit here all night and do that.
Right, but, I mean, they're somewhere in between, like, Brian brought up the 6.5 million, but that number can't be anywhere near real with the 550 coming on. If it is, we have a real problem, but we don't expect that number to be anything. My
Right.
faith in that number is really low. So,
Yes, and I do hope we're in the universe where 550 comes on as we've planned and all that, but, stuff happens. And I guess it's just, as we're planning the message we give to the departments, I mean, we don't want to terrify them, we don't want to give them doom and gloom, but there is, part of our messaging is there's a lot of risk floating out there, and we're doing our best to mitigate it, but there's a lot of risk out there.
Okay.
Yep.
What's out there now, Brian?
okay. Is there things you need the finance committee for the special town meeting?
If they'd like to just stick around for that, they're certainly under that. We're going to, we can hit that quickly. But basically, and also just an affirmation of the votes that they've already taken. So you have the table in front of you. I just wanted to make sure that that's consistent with what your understanding was from the finance committee and what the select board votes were. So the first article was a select board article, just it voted to accept the report. So there's support from both boards for Articles 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9, I think, as well. And then the town clerk Scrivener errors, which is Article 11. The select board was the only part, we voted on that to the affirmative. So we've got no votes on Article 11 because it's funding collective bargaining agreements. We may or may not have proposals to put forward there. We had our presentation tonight on Article 5, which was the marijuana zoning amendment. So, right now, it's up to the select board, and the finance committee, but that's up to you whether or not you want to make any recommendations on that article. But otherwise, we're pretty close. And then I would also ask for the select board, through the chair, that typically we assign speakers on each article. So if anybody wants to volunteer or volunteer Chuck, you're welcome to do that as well.
But the only article that we would vote on would be Article 4. And it sounds like we're not going to have numbers or the CPC agreement much before town meeting.
So then that's sort of how I had penciled that in. Yeah, so it's kind of just, this is also partially an update to you to let you know that that's.
Is there any value to you or Tim to have our vote before the 29th?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because it's going to.
No, I think it's, I think, and it's still, Jim had sent a reminder to Tim, unless you'd like to get in front of CPC.
We'll plan on a vote, the pre-meeting on the 29th, and that, other than that, I think FinCom is pretty well set for this town meeting.
Okay, very good.
Did we vote to endorse Article 1?
So what Article 1 was just that you voted to accept the report.
To accept it, okay.
So it's sort of a bit of a misnomer.
Thank you.
But
okay.
That's just an informational.
Yeah, that's why I was curious about
a
a recommendation, but no, we accepted the report. That makes sense.
Yeah. One question with that, and we've kind of heard it different phases, I just wanted to make sure that right now we've got the presentation that's going to be provided. Typically, the town moderator lets the presentation, 10-minute presentation, but there's also this idea about should we allow for questions, but I think what we had talked about was using the town meeting as a launching point for other sessions where people have more time to be able to ask questions. I just want to make sure with both groups that that's our ask.
Two scheduled meetings, right, the 16th and 20th.
Right, but then after the fact too, there'd be some, but I think that's what we were talking about, but I just wanted to make sure from both boards.
Right, Tim said he didn't want to take questions at town meeting. So just a question I have is after we have the two upcoming listening meetings, and then there's going to be the creation of the messaging to be given at town meeting. And are we all going to vote to approve that? Or is that just going to be the school building committee that does that?
They're going to do it. We're not
right now, for this meeting, we could send, right? But you guys have your own message, right? You're talking strictly the schools?
I'm talking about the Shaker Lane project.
Okay. I think we're premature.
I don't think there's any messaging we can really give. I mean, all you're going to say is it's an override.
No, I think, I call it an infomercial by the school committee or school superintendent on why we're coming forward with this project. And my recommendation, and I've already made it, is that, the final slide should be, these are the next 6 meetings that were town-wide get-together discussions that we're going to have, and please come out and and learn and voice your opinion, because this is bigger than the Red Rock.
The problem I have is that because I did get the postcard, and I went to their website, I went to their website, and basically it said, here's all the reasons we need the new school. Great. It covered everything except cost. Now, we can say again and again, oh, but we don't know the cost. But sure we do. Sure we do. We know from their, Jim, we know from their presentation, they gave us 6 projects and 6 numbers, and they picked 3, and we have numbers for those. Those are ballpark numbers. And I think we do a disservice to the town if we present at town meeting, here's this school that we want to build, here's all the good reasons for doing it, and by the way, we're not going to tell you anything about the projected costs that we absolutely know and submitted to the state.
I concur.
You could just say, here's what we submitted to the state.
Well, that's the thing. I think handing out a sheet that had the 3 projects and the cost and the question of how much the state was going to reimburse, I think that's necessary.
So I think your chance to influence that is to show up to one of the meetings on the 16th or the 23rd and help influence their message.
Because remember, this is
Yeah,
school
they're not
committee.
gonna- they're not gonna listen.
It's school
They're
committee's
doing dry
discussion, it's
runs
school
on the
committee's
presentation.
decision. I mean, we're just,
Yeah, but at the same time, Brian raises a good point. You can't just ignore that either, because it is on the earlier side, but I think that whatever is presented to town meeting has to have some element of costs and to share that. Because because at that point, that's really where, that's the big coming out time.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, people who haven't been even aware that this whole process has been going on are going to really see that at that time, and so it.
Right, because if we don't say anything, and then they do the presentation, and then someone gets up and says, and how much is this going to cost? And Tim says, well, we can't tell you, we'll tell you at some other meeting. That's not going to go over well.
Point taken, point taken. So, Mr. Chair, do you have, as far as the speakers, any of the select board speakers, do you want to go through that, maybe, to?
Sure, Bill.
Do you want to?
And
Motion to adjourn, FinCom?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Okay. Building committee, we don't have to have one, correct? And the planning board?
Right, that's right, yep.
So 1 and 5 were done. Bills of prior years. I don't,
It was orchard related, so maybe Matthew.
Yeah, I'll take the orchard. I'll take 10.
Oh, it's in front, so they're looking.
you want 1 and 10?
One?
Or 2 and 10, sorry.
We're not going to speak to, we're not going to speak to 1.
2, sorry.
Oh, sorry, 2, sure, I'll take
Yes,
2.
yes.
Yeah, sure. No one's going to talk about 2.
Yeah.
Everybody jump in, come on.
Yeah, I'll take 2.
I guess, I mean, Chuck is on the committee on number 4, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
He
Yes.
should definitely speak to that.
You want to take the on-call fire department one, Gary?
Where are we?
Number 6.
I'll take that one.
Okay, sure.
You're the chair, you're supposed to gobble them all up.
Yeah.
This is kind of light, huh?
Yeah.
It is.
This is,
Since 8 is, all the money's going to the discretion of the select board, Mark, you should have 8.
Sure.
Three is just the language on the MassWorks grant. It should be fairly straightforward.
I can do straightforward.
Okay.
So you'll take 3.
Okay.
Sure.
Give 1 more to Chuck and 1 more to Karen and 2 to Gary, and we'll be done. Pick 2 at random.
you know,
Gary.
I mean, we don't know if collective bargaining agreement.
Well, so you should sign that one, yeah.
All right, sure, I mean, that's, what's the amend Article 12, what's that, for number 9?
Number 9 is... Number 9
Orchard,
is the expansion, that's $50,000 for the repurposing of the orchard.
Oh, I mean, I can take that one.
Again, yeah. that's
Yeah, I'll take that one as
9.
well.
Okay.
Very Matthew heavy.
Yeah, so you can have bills of prior years, Gary.
All right.
Okay.
No one, so you get off scot-free. No one's going to talk about either of those.
You say
things.
that every
All
time
right.
that I get it.
I'll take 7.
Mark,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'll take 12.
Okay.
we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck got out of one.
Are we going to ask the town moderator which ones he was putting on the consent agenda?
That will come as we continue the conversations with them. So the report should be mailed out to everybody in town on either Friday or Saturday of this upcoming week. So, but we will, he did mention there would be a few that he'd be looking at, but I'll be having that conversation with him, and we'll refine it as we
Okay.
go along.
Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, the administrative assistant?
Yes. This is, this particular position, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Select Board, was part of the budget cycle last year for an increase of the hours. And so it is in this current budget, and there was interest by the current employee that's working that's at 19 hours a week, the desire to expand the responsibilities through the request of our town planner. And it went through the proper steps with the advisory committee, graded it, and we are recommending moving forward with that. Any specific details, Maren?
I know Mark and I had talked a little bit offline, some of the consistencies with a lot of our grades with same titled positions. The administrative assistant that recently was graded for EHS. One of the largest grade controlling elements to that position, why it was a great hire, is the access to the sensitive information, all the financial information of all of the
HIPAA.
Seniors, all the HIPAA information, literally all their financials and other potential things. So that really carried that grade when we're talking about only a few points between grade 7 and grade 8, and that's why that one actually graded out at 8. So I had to go back.
I think it would be better just to call them different titles.
I agree with you. I know, and I think we can get to that.
Did the town ever look at like administrative assistant 1, administrative
I love
assistant
it.
2?
I know.
3?
They do it with accountants, they do it with...
Yeah.
What, do you have an idea? I mean, I don't have anything else to say about it. I'm glad we get this to full-time, so.
Yeah.
What's the budget impact of this change?
It's in the current budget, and this went through the
We voted
budget
it,
process.
Got it.
But we needed the position.
So just for clarity, we're approving the job description, and we're posting this job, and you're going to come back for a promotion effectively? Is that what we would have to do?
Well, that's pre-selection. I'm assuming,
If
is it
it's
getting
an internal
posted?
candidate?
No. I believe, no, the request was fulfilling the beginning September 3rd at a grade 7, step 4.
But that's not what's in that's why I'm confused, because there's, what the letter says versus what's in the motion aren't the same thing.
Right, but the motion's to establish the position.
Right, so one's to establish the position and the other is to fill the position. So we're just establishing the position at this point, not necessarily having the hire.
We
That
are,
would
I
be at
guess, because this position is being upgraded from a part-time to a full-time position with an existing.
Are we eliminating the old position?
Yes, well, I mean, it just expands, so the person stays in the position.
And the part-time position goes away.
Correct.
Well, we might not, I'm not sure if there are times we don't get rid of the old job description because we may need it, and so.
True, okay.
But
But the only thing that's coming in before us is approving the position, because we wouldn't approve the hire, right?
Well, we would if it was outside of the bounds of the promotion policy, right?
Which I don't think it is.
So.
I don't.
That
I believe I think Jim has
That was-
the authority, to
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we made that change like last meeting.
The meeting I missed, yeah.
We snuck it
Everything's on
by.
Jim now.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I know that was an easy one for you.
Move that the select board vote to approve and establish the administrative assistant planning position on grade 7 of compensation plan Schedule A, permanent, full, and part-time employees.
Second?
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Collins Center, Anthony Wilson,
They still here?
Well, how far?
right on time.
Are we how far out?
Never get involved, never come to a meeting that has financial discussions.
Or marijuana.
Yeah, or marijuana, yeah.
Or rezoning.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, to the Select Board. We were asked to come to present about an organizational structure study that may be undertaken by the town of Littleton. Again, my name is Anthony Wilson with the Collins Center. I've been leading the charter and organizational structure team at the Collins Center for the past 2 years. Prior to that, I was city clerk in the city of Cambridge, city clerk in the city of Springfield, and a lawyer for the city of Springfield for several years. I'm joined here by Mel Kleckner. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, members of the board, Jim and Ryan, nice to see you. I have been in their job for my whole career. I retired 2 years ago as a town administrator, town manager for over 40 years in Massachusetts. So I've been exposed to a number of different communities, all in Massachusetts, open town meeting, representative town meeting, and everything in between. So I look forward to trying to help the town figure out where it wants to go in terms of its organizational structure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in addition to the two of us, there are several other members of the Collins Center that are former municipal officials at various towns and cities of various sizes, as well as different sort of structures, mayors, town meeting towns, select board, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. And next slide. And the next slide. I'm going to go through this quickly because you've had a long meeting. So why have so many of us assembled at the Collins Center at UMass? Well, the Collins Center was established in 2008 by the legislature for the specific purpose of providing technical assistance to municipalities, school districts, state agencies, and other public organizations to provide that sort of management consulting that is not always there for the public sector. Our primary areas of focus are finance, human resources, operations, analytics, recruitment, IT, and obviously organizational structure. There was a lot that you discussed today about sort of the finances and the organization of the town. So those are some of the areas that we help communities with. We've worked with, that slide says more than 2/3 of the state. It might be more than 3/4 of municipalities across the state at this point in time. Next slide. And we work with communities of varying sizes. Your 100,000 and up communities, as well as communities smaller than 1,000. I think Mel just finished a project in a community under 1,000. And again, we help with the various forms of government, which we will talk about a little bit later in the presentation, and the process for transitioning through the various forms. Next slide, please. So that's just a summary of some of the more recent projects that we've done. Again, you can see that these are communities of varying sizes and structures in the state. Next slide. So the basics of the charter. What we talk to with communities is that you can think of it like a constitution for a municipality. In Massachusetts, and particularly here in Littleton, you don't have a charter. You are operating under your bylaws and under your sort of state law that created the community way back when. The charter is a nice document in that it incorporates all of the structural understanding of the community at a level that is harder to change than perhaps a bylaw, but does not have the rigidity, or it's not out of your control in the way that act of the state legislature may be. So that is a good place for you to put some of these aspects of your government that you don't want to change that easily. Next slide, please. And that's just an excerpt from the National League of Cities summarizing, or actually saying it much longer than what I said about the charter being the local constitution. Next slide. So charter review, or the creation of a charter or other organizational structure. So In Massachusetts, and again, we're going to talk about this later in the presentation, there are a number of different forms of municipal structure that go from cities, which we'll talk about in a little bit in depth, to towns, and there are 2 prescribed paths for going through these different structures. One is 43B, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and the other one is something that you're probably familiar with, which is a special act, which is something that comes from the town. Next slide, please. So, 43B, created under the state constitution. I'm going to go through this very quickly because that's not sort of the situation that Littleton is in, but it's generated by a citizen petition. That's a number of citizens here in a community like Littleton getting together, signing a petition, submitting it. It provides a path to a charter. It has very strict deadlines. It requires an 18-month process with a variety of opportunities for public input. The other path, which I would say more communities take than not, is the special act path. It requires, or it allows for more flexibility in the same way that you would pass any other special act at the local level. Next slide. So the special act charter, usually, and this is not a requirement, but usually in communities like this, the select board will appoint a charter committee. The committee can be comprised of elected officials. It can be comprised of department heads. Usually it's comprised of citizens that are assembled from the community. Again, I'm just referring to Mel a number of times here. He's currently on a project in Ludlow where they use reverse 911 to solicit citizens to come and be part of their charter committee. The committee works, it usually takes between 12 and 18 months to create a report that will go to the select board for inclusion in a town meeting. The report would include the language for a special act to be submitted to the legislature by the town meeting. It will also include an explanation of how the charter committee came to its decisions, the things that it reviewed and why it made certain decisions, and why it didn't put certain things in the charter that may have been important but didn't rise to the level of being included in the charter. Next slide, please. And so once the special act goes to the State House, again, it's out of the hands of the municipality, but the legislature will convert the special act petition, into a bill. The bill will go through a variety of hearings at the local in committees. Passed by if it is passed by the legislature, it will come back to the municipality. It's not required, but we recommend including a clause in your special act that would require a local vote in the community on the ballot after it's adopted. So basically, it will be seen by the community. It will be assembled by the committee. It will be seen by the select board before it goes to the town meeting. It will be discussed and debated at the town meeting. It will go to the legislature, and then the community sees it a second time on the ballot. That's not required for a special act charter, but it's something that we do recommend in that structure. And the other thing I want to say is, if you have a question, there's time at the end for questions, but feel free to interrupt or raise your hand at any point during the presentation.
Actually, I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Does the language of the special act contain the entire language of the charter?
That is correct.
Is that all that it contains, or is there additional wording and other things in the special act in addition to the charter language?
Well, so what comes out of the committee is the document for the special act. That document will include some sort of procedural clauses. For example, the additional vote, the local vote. That you can think of it as a
kind of ratifying.
Yeah, as a procedural clause. Okay. But it will be part of this final report, which will include language. I think a good example is sort of, there's a concern in town about, and I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, but about spending, for example. The community may not, whatever the proposal is, they may not think that it's appropriate to include in the charter, but it may be a message to the town meeting, to the select board. We heard this during our deliberations. It's not appropriate for the charter, but you guys should consider this as you move forward. So the report provides a lot of context and information that can be useful beyond that. Correct.
But the special act is the charter, essentially.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Next slide. So the community's work plan. When we work with committees, there's again, traditionally committees are composed of citizens, not necessarily those that are highly involved in politics, but obviously they have some sense of civic engagement because they're on the committee. But I didn't research everyone, so I don't know how long you've been on the select board, but everyone has this realization when they step into these roles that the town government is more complex than I might have thought looking from the outside in. And there is that learning curve that happens when you're on the committee. And so we provide a lot of context. We do a lot of research working with the administration about here's how things happen in Littleton currently. Here's where that sits in the context for communities across the state. And where do you, and that facilitates a discussion about where the members on the committee want to be sort of on that, in that universe. Importantly, there's also the involvement of the community at large. I tell committees regularly to think of the committee as an extra member and dedicate as an extra member of the committee and dedicate a certain number of meetings to just talking about what you've decided, why you've decided it, even before you've completed your report and submitted it. So there's usually at least 2 or 3 what we call public input sessions where the committee really just listens to the community about what it's decided, can have a little bit of dialogue to explain themselves, and incorporate that as they produce a final document. Next slide, please. And so quickly, I'll go through this forms of government. There are essentially 2 types. We draw a line that towns are all communities that sort of have a town meeting, and cities are all communities that have a council, whether it's called a town council or a city council, and the city forms can have multiple forms of executive. Think of the elected mayor versus the appointed town manager. And in Massachusetts, everybody is not allowed to have a city form of government. You have to have more than 12,000 inhabitants to have the option of becoming a city. On the other hand, if you have more than 6,000, you have the opportunity of having what's called representative town meeting. I'm open to answering questions about it, but I'm going to sort of gloss over that as we proceed in the presentation. Next slide. I won't cover this in depth, but this is a breakdown by the number of communities and the number of population. Most communities, if you just count the number of communities, are town meeting communities. That's because most communities are relatively small. But the majority of the population of the state lives in cities, and that's sort of self-explanatory. Next slide, please. So that's just a quick breakdown of how the of this slide before council manager versus city council mayor. Next slide, please. Next slide. And so the general trends, like what are we seeing across the state as we engage in these charter and organizational studies? Generally, there's a consolidation of elected boards and committees. There's an emphasis on a transparent and open budgeting process. There's a focus on, this is part of the budgeting process, but capital planning is specifically called out into its own section of the charter, and thinking about, looking at the capital planning yearly, but thinking about it in sort of 5 to 10 year increments. And as, there's usually clauses in there that assert the communities, whichever community in Massachusetts has their home rule authority. And newer things are sort of incorporating emerging technologies. The state has, we went through this crisis with COVID, and the state really grappled with communities being able to meet either virtually in public or hybrid, and that's still evolving. But that's something that communities, as they look at the charter process, are really examining. And I'll sort of skip down to the bottom one, which is more of a statement of purpose. There's been a concerted but thoughtful effort at removing gender pronouns from charters or from these types of documents to sort of make it more accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. So those, I sort of went through some of those emerging trends. Next slide. And so these are just some of the guiding principles when we make a charter. The charter is made both for those in town hall, your elected and appointed officials, but also for the public. So we try to make it simple, understandable, have it sectioned in a sort of appropriate, understandable way. Because at the end of the day, it's going to help those who govern understand their rules and parameters, and it's going to understand the members of the public. It's going to help the members of the public understand what they can expect from their public officials. Next slide, please. And so that's the end of the presentation. I kind of rushed through there, hopefully for your benefit, but we are both present if there are any questions or comments.
I guess one question, are you guys present at the meetings, at each meeting?
Well, so that does depend on the structure of the contract. That, just to be candid with you, it does depend on, communities don't want to just waste money because it costs money. But I would say that these projects are more successful the more meetings that we're at, so to speak.
Sure.
But we don't usually go to every meeting. So, for example, while we'll watch a public comment meeting, we don't necessarily go to those because that's really for the board to make itself available to the public. And if there's meetings where, it's a fire hose of information. So we give a lot of information to boards, and there are some meetings where they have an opportunity to sit down amongst themselves and just discuss what they've heard and feel each other out. And again, those are also great places for us to sort of let the committee be with itself. So I would say we err on the side of recommending being at as many meetings as is appropriate, but not necessarily all of them.
Are there other mechanisms besides the charter process to switch to a different form of town government?
No. So the special act process is allowed for sort of any number of things. You want to be exempted from state law. It's the only other process aside from 43B in which you can change your form of government.
Okay. The other question is, do you are you able to, let me put some context on this. It strikes me that the makeup and the personnel on that committee can make or break this process. So how much input do you provide in a typical scenario on who the membership is, how many there are? Is there like a, jury selection type of
Well, one of the things that we have provided is examples of, one of the things we do recommend is if this comes from the select board, that when the select board create the committee, that it give the committee a charge. And the charge will consist of things like, here's what we expect you to look at. Here's the output, again, like a final report and special act language. And the time frame that we expect you to do this in. Those are sort of the broad categories. We do provide examples. I've got like 10 or 20 versions of these types of charges from the select board to create the committee. And we do provide and have provided some information about sort of the recommended sizes. Now, we don't specifically sit down with the select board or whomever to go through resumes or anything like that, but we do recommend that you try to get a diverse group of individuals from the community. And again, that's a challenge, sort of that community engagement piece. And pay careful attention to the person that is selected to chair the committee, because a good chair can really help these things move along.
So are you suggesting the committee isn't self-organized on the chair and the select board appoint a chair, or?
I'm not going to stop you from doing anything, but what I'd say is I've seen the most success where the committee that creates the body that creates the committee also appoints the chair.
You had this drawback. You had mentioned that most success, I guess, I don't know if you said that or not, but comes from people in the community that want to be involved in the community engagement in this change. Did you say that typically not people that are on boards? Because those are already volunteering. I mean, they're already engaged, so that personality or that type of person tends to want to be vested much more into it seems like, than people that just maybe, I'm not sure. But I mean, it's a small community. I mean, we have a ton of boards right now that aren't filled. I mean, we go through it every meeting. And this is a heavy lift. So I was just curious, you're saying that if a member of the FinCom or Finance Committee, that typically we don't see members of boards on these?
What I would say is there's definitely I'm going to actually turn over to Mel in a second, but what I do want to say is there's a variety of membership on the board with a varying level of engagement in sort of civic decisions.
I see what you're saying.
It's not wrong to put members of existing boards on the committee, but I would say you have to be sort of careful as you're choosing the board that you don't put on, for example, I would say you don't put on, because we've seen boards with select members, or at least one member of the board, but elected officials are sort of used to being engaged in that type of debate and can
overwhelm or
exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
But on the flip side, it's good to have people that may not, to do your best to get people that may not have always been involved, because they may represent a constituency at your town meeting or even in the vote that might not otherwise be heard. Now that's sort of a tall order, and that's why I'll just bring Mel up here if you want to talk a little bit about the reverse 911 and some of the committees you talked about.
Well, I would say that we prefer, or we like to see a member of the select board or two, either on the committee or being sort of a liaison, to make sure that the committee doesn't get too far afield, because there's a lot of policy issues that are being addressed in this process. There doesn't have to be, but it's our experience that when you take up issues around elected officials or boards or the authority of the town administrator versus the select board, these are very high-level policy issues, and I think the select board kind of has to keep a little bit of review on that. That's what I would suggest. The issue about other committees, what you want to try to avoid is people who have a preconceived notion or are trying to save their current
committee, their board,
committee's status or what have you. And we deal with this all the time. Small towns, you don't have that luxury sometimes, so you have to do the best you can.
Do you find that there's a sort of a common indicator for towns that begin this process, either in terms of size or government structure existing or problems that they're experiencing?
I would say communities that have experienced change in population or recent times growth, that's been a big indicator that there's an interest, because you've got you're evolving, you're in general we find across the state, and this may be because of the state government, it's becoming more of a complex challenge to manage local government. People are adopting personnel departments and even in smaller and smaller communities. So there's a sort of greater bureaucracy at the state level, and then there's this population shift in the state that is sort of requiring that change.
We recommend that charters are good for any community. Charter, just good government, opportunity to kind of get what you do, and this town's been around for 200 and some odd years, so it's really hard to try to tease that all out over hundreds of years of state laws and acceptances of this law, and so charter really is good government. But I would say that where we work, there usually is something that is driving it. They're not happy with town meeting, or they're not, they couldn't get a vote of town meeting, or perhaps there's elected bodies that are not cooperating, if you will, or something like that. Sometimes it's about trying to create more of a different relationship with the town administrator and the board, maybe giving more authority, or doing something different. So typically there are some issues that are driving this, but not always. And what happens is, as Anthony said before, a lot of issues come up and in this process. Some of them are charter related and others are not. And so the committee sometimes has to deal with that in their report about stuff like that.
One clarification, which I should have made actually during the presentation, is that this isn't always, the creation of a charter does not mean necessarily a change of government. In many cases, it is the codification of what you're already doing and establishing in a place where people can look, just singularly understand how the government works.
What size of a committee do you typically recommend?
I would say the best, we would usually see committees between the 7 to 11 range. Yeah.
And you said this takes a 12 to 18 month process, or is that with monthly meetings, bi-weekly meetings? I'm wondering what the time commitment is for anyone that was.
So I would say what we usually see, and Mel, if you've seen them, please jump in, but it's meeting about twice a month, for about 2 hours, per meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus homework.
Plus homework, yes, yeah.
You had mentioned going through the process and having it was successful through the legislature, the governor signs it, then it goes back and it's on a ballot. What if it fails on the ballot? What happens?
Then it's failed at that point. I mean, it's a lot of work for the community, not just for the community, it's for the community. So if it fails on the ballot, it fails. There's nothing prohibiting a community from going through the charter process again. But if it fails and people put in a lot of work and they assembled what they thought was the best document, then it's an indication that the community, whatever was proposed, is not sort of what the community was looking for. But I mean, I'm speaking kind of for myself, having watched and participated in these processes. There is something to be gained by people sort of going through it and getting that deeper understanding of their structure.
Between the time town meeting approved it and it comes back for the ballot vote, going through the legislative bodies, do you normally see it changing? Or is it more, so the second vote is typically more of a formality?
I would say that depends. I'll say I don't often see it changing. It depends on how, I guess, I'll use this word because I can't think of another one, how radical the changes might be that then the legislature takes a closer look. But for the most part, and then the other thing to sort of keep in mind is that when you send it to the legislature, one of those procedural clauses, you can say, we only want to get this back if you voted it up or down, yay or nay. Or you can put a clause in saying, if the legislature wants to make changes, yes, you can. And then there's a dialogue between the legislature and the town about what the legislature is suggesting. Usually the changes are made through the manager's office with consulting with the with council. So, no.
I was just going to say that, as Anthony said, you try not to make too many, if you raise red flags at the legislature, it's going to create problems. So for example, if you said, we want in our charter the ability for 16-year-olds to vote, it ain't happening, at the legislature. Technically and legally, that's sort of within your home rule authority, I guess, but it will never happen. And so we, as the Collins Center, will advise the committee as they come up with ideas that we think would create problems at the legislature.
So, sort of relating to that, where is the legislature in terms of approving hybrid town meeting structures?
For open town meeting, it's an open question. It's not, it's representative town meetings. There has been more progress made, and just because it's more practical and it's, you can manage some of the requirements, but up in the air right now, I think. About
Wayland's
open
petition
town
hasn't gone
meetings.
anywhere yet.
What's that?
Wayland's petition hasn't gone anywhere yet.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
But they were operating under a town manager form.
I know they put a petition in to be able to operate hybrid.
With town meeting, hybrid.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's helpful.
Very, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Next
Appreciate
steps?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
So I believe I don't want to say Jim, so Mr. Duggan.
Jim, please. Jim, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Littleton has a grant from the state to move forward with this type of work.
Correct.
We've sent over a proposed contract, which is, I think, under review.
Yep.
So presumably, once you sign that, we'd sort of be on board. The next step for the community would be to form the committee. And again, if you give me the go-ahead, I'll send over some examples of charges that the select board could adopt for the creation of the committee. And then it usually takes, I would say, depending on how active the community is, and I apologize, I don't know the politics in Littleton that well, but I'd say between 3 to 4 weeks to get all your members situated, have sort of an inaugural meeting where people get to know each other, and then the next meeting would sort of be get up and go.
I will, Anthony's right, I have their contract and waiting for the state to come through with the grant paperwork, and I'll reach out to Mr. Cronin tomorrow and just say, waiting. And I did, to answer the question about whether there at every single meeting, Ryan and I had preliminary conversations, and we were given the usual, the recommended number of hours, and anything beyond that. What we did was, so we took that recommended, and then we added maybe 6 more hours on top of that at their hourly rate. So there will be a little bit of overlap in the event that the select board wants a little more hand-holding or attention or advice or guidance. So,
So we have a couple,
George is first.
Mr. Sanders?
I can stand right here. George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I think I have about 3 questions. One, Littleton, based on its population right now, can never become a city, is that right?
I would say when we last looked at the population, you can't choose to be a city at this point.
Okay, the second thing is that going with the charter, we're actually moving from under the state regulation control the way the town operates, and we're going into a category of setting up a charter for the town. Is that what we would be doing?
In terms of more independence from the state, I would say that would be more of a change in the form of government, like going to a city which is not available at your current size. You'd still have things like, right now I think your bylaws have to be approved by, or I know your bylaws have to be approved by the Attorney General. Things like that would remain in place.
But to clarify, there's state statutes that say how the library trustees operate and how park and rec departments operate and things like that. By doing a charter, we're now under control of those rather than the state statutes.
That is correct. You could decide, in the charter process, say we would like this board or committee or elected position to operate in this way. And once that gets approved by the state, that is how it will operate here in Littleton.
Yeah,
was that your question, Mr.
Yeah,
Sanders?
that's what I was wondering. Will we be under control with what we want instead of the state saying you got this committee here and you got that committee there?
Well, again, I just put the caveat, I'm getting a little bit into my sort of committee advisory roles. You have flexibility, but the more you divert from sort of what's understood by the state, that could cause friction.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rob Houston, 55 Jennifer Street. I just have a question for the town as much as anything. We have a grant to fund this work. What about town support, administrative support? Sounds to me like it's a heavy lift of both the community engaged committee members, but you're going to need somebody to take notes. I'm just trying to figure out administratively, how does this actually work? You assign tasks amongst the 11 committee members, or is there an administrative support person that supports the committee? I'm just curious.
And a corollary for that is, will we incur expenses from town council in this process?
So we, in our preliminary conversation, we did discuss this a little bit. So there will be a sort of a liaison between the committee and the administration to coordinate. Again, if the committee wants to meet with the sort of a member of the planning board to understand how they operate, or so on and so forth. So there's a natural link between the committee and the administration to just coordinate its work. What we usually see in most committees is that a member of the committee will be taking minutes. You could have a staff member do that. Again, it depends on what you think is appropriate. So it varies. Some communities have a dedicated staff person. Some communities have a member of the committee take the minutes. Obviously, you'll be using community resources in terms of meeting rooms or Zooms, however you do that. And then in terms of other costs, and I don't know because we haven't done this, the only other place I've seen sort of major costs discussed is for example, if the size of the select board were to be expanded, and then there's a discussion about, extra salaries or things of that nature. Aside from that, and then there's the ancillary costs related to if they want to have a public meeting, we're going to have it in, you have a beautiful library here, if there are costs related to that.
But Mr. Houston's time, or question, you're not saying that, the TA is going to be at all of these meetings and participate, and you're not going to be using his time outside of the meetings?
In your
Right.
selection process, you're gonna wanna make sure you got people who are good note takers. You're taking 11 people who have never done this before.
We also have, we have senior work off programs and things where
Yeah, we can-
they used to watch the show, the show.
I'm just trying to figure out
Watch the meeting and take
how it
notes.
actually
We call it
functions in these meetings of 7 to 11 people.
We have
There's a lot of work going on here.
There is a lot of work, and the Collins Center has a sort of a system of approaching it. So we take an article at a time and sort of provide the committee with some context and some decision points that are typically made, and so we kind of walk through it, and we have a system. We don't need any professional support, but we will need from time to time, committee support.
That was my question. I was
Yes.
just trying to get at, they're going to be volunteers, right? And they're committed to doing it. That's why they're volunteering to do it. But I'm just trying to understand how, we're on committees or boards now, and sometimes they run smoothly, sometimes they don't, right? And sometimes the person who takes notes isn't there that week, and so you're finding somebody else to take notes. So I'm just trying to understand how it works in real life, for lack of a better word.
I think we have a pretty good system where there's a systematic approach of doing it.
You guys are professionals, you've done it before.
Yeah, and Anthony's a lawyer, we have other lawyers on our committee, but we're not writing it as lawyers, we're writing it as local government professionals. So, we would definitely, if you were going to town meeting, you would want your council to review this. And we work with councils all over the place, and, a lot of them are the same ones, so we have pretty good experience with it.
So you said something that I just want to expand on here a little bit. You said you do these like one at a time, like you're going to say town administrator versus town manager, we're going to make that decision. This board elected versus appointed, you're going to go like one at a time through these? You're not trying to slice them off and work your way down?
So what we have is what I call an exemplar charter. So basically there's like, I think it's at 11 sort of general articles that appear in most charters. And so we sort of structure it in that way. And so one section is on the legislative body, one section is on the executive. And then there's a section on sort of other elected boards and commissions. And so we sort of parcel the discussion out in that way across meetings. And then, as sort of every community is unique, so as unique sort of issues arise, that can generate sort of an article that will be unique to that community. But generally, we like the community to think about it in terms of the document that they're writing. That way, sort of things go into the topic area that they're supposed to.
Okay, thank you.
Rob Rounds, 25 Juniper Road. So help me understand 500 King Street with regard to increases to Littleton's population base over a time horizon.
550 King Street?
550, sorry.
So my best guess is that we've increased our population about 1,000 every decade.
Yeah, but this is
And this is scheduled to go in over about a decade. And we're talking about maybe 2,000, like it's 800 units?
Yeah, so it's a 2,000, but
2,000.
okay, all right.
It's not far outside the realm of what we've seen so far.
And I would add, you're talking specifically about a mayor. Well, we've got many communities around us that are 3-4 times our size that don't have mayors.
No, I understand, but I'm anticipating a great deal of unhappiness when we come up against the Shaker school replacement that can't contemplate the increased population. And I suspect that that's going to hit at a time, or at least that's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they can consider increased population sizes as they anticipate the needs of the school. And I just wanted to know, are we going to potentially have a somewhat similar progression of population that some might find it an easy target to say, why didn't you contemplate this? Given it, if it's a 2,000 over a decade and it's a, on a pro rata basis, maybe we're not there. That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask one last question? George Sanders, 682 Great Road. Would you want these meetings recorded?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Like on television?
Yep.
Yep.
Now, that's good.
We want a dark room with cigars and low light.
Smoke filled rooms.
So, Anthony, I just wanted to just close the loop on something. You had thrown out a committee size up to 11. I got somewhat of more of an impression that tighter is better, not having as many. And so something of relative of a community of 10, 11,000 people. I mean, what would be appropriate for size?
The committee sizing is, I mean, we've all been doing this for, it's more art than science. But we've seen committee 7, 9 has worked.
Yeah.
So.
Fair enough.
And again, there's always the challenges of people coordinating their schedules, getting together. So that, that all contributes to,
You need that core, you gotta have that
But
quorum.
on the other hand, you want a representative group.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
what I think we should, it's a lot of information to digest. I think we should, sleep on it at our next meeting, talk about what we want to do for a committee, what size we want, how we want to advertise for it, how we want to fill it, and.
Do you want Anthony to submit, pass on to us the next steps?
Yeah, that would
to
be.
move forward? And then I'll check with Sean Cronin in the morning and.
But do we need a motion tonight just to say, yes, we are going forward?
I don't know we need a motion for that, do we?
Do we need a motion for you to allow you to sign the contract?
I believe we do.
You do? I didn't.
If it's over 50,000, yeah. But,
So that's a. is that a
Okay,
yes?
so we all have agreed that we
Yeah.
want to do this, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need a motion, but I think we're all in agreement
Okay.
that we should go forward.
Agreed.
Yep.
Let's just leave time at our next meeting to figure out how we based on their recommendations, where we want to start and when we want to start.
So do you want the authorization for me to sign the contract in the next meeting because it's over 50?
Yeah.
If it's, yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. But other than that, we'll continue. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for staying up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mel.
Thank you.
40 years, Mel? 41. Did you start when you were 15?
Okay. The HCA with Common Care Collective?
Okay.
But it's 9:24.
Yeah,
You promised.
I know.
You failed us again.
Finance, man.
It's the Finance Committee.
Is it though?
So,
Well, as you can, as you have seen from the correspondence from town council and on the notification that I had forwarded to you, the commission had rejected the HCA, stating that, violations there were regulations that were violated, one of which was the HCA does not include the date of execution by both parties. Our town council disagrees with that, but so be it. The second issue, no HCA may contain a provision to impose legal or administrative costs of any of the costs on that. And the town's HCA and MRM Industries, in which the HCA is regarding, included this exact same tax provision with the CPA and betterment classification, and the commission approved it. So previously, they had approved the language. Now, this time, they did not approve the
This
language.
is one of the issues with that.
Exactly,
commission.
the
It's unbelievable.
inconsistencies. And the third issue, the no HCA, basically, the commission believes the HCA waives communities' ability to dispute fees or bring legal challenge. And it is both not only MRM Industries council, but our town council that don't feel that way. They don't believe that provision waives any establishment of to challenge any HCA fees, anything. The town can collect the fee, but the town will need to work through whether the impact is from a processing or cultivation, anything like that. But this was a recommendation by town council to move forward and to sign it.
Mark, can I just do it? So that we're accepting the Reading version tonight.
Yes.
But, which, okay, it doesn't change things too significantly. I didn't find when I read through it, it was kind of a head scratcher on why this has been accepted before.
Correct.
So it seems to me when it gets to the commission, it just depends who's looking at it.
That's exactly right.
So we can just, the question is, this has already been vetted by, the two parties, in other words, our
Correct.
attorneys and theirs have already said.
Correct.
We'll accept the Reading?
Exactly.
Okay, all right, that's all I mean, I'm comfortable with the
Yeah,
change in right. It's just,
changes are fine.
it's just a head scratcher, that's all.
Yeah, I agree with that, so. So, Collective has approved this basically as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go. Move that the select board vote to approve the updated host community agreement HCA with Community Care Collective.
Second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Matthew, you're up.
Oh, goody. So, working group met last Wednesday. We will meet again this coming Wednesday. We have preliminarily decided on criteria to evaluate the 3 RFPs which were responsive. The 3 responses to the RFP that were responsive. And we, let's see, what else is going on? We have made contact with MAPC. We're going to begin discussing moving forward with them in parallel with the discussions about the lease. I understand that that's sort of 2 different paths. However, if the lease negotiations don't pan out, we don't want to be waiting around through Springtown meeting before we begin the process of trying to sell the property again.
So at our meeting, we discussed any questions we had for any of the respondents. Matthew forwarded them off to them. We're going to incorporate we sent the same questions to all lease respondents, and we'll incorporate their answers into our evaluation process. The goal is to have 2 more Orchard Working Group meetings, one this Wednesday, I think other is the following Tuesday.
Correct.
At which we will evaluate the proposals, and everyone's going to score them, and then we're going to, then Matthew and I will pick them and start working on the lease negotiations. So,
Well, that's after the select board meets.
Yeah.
And
as
a board, we have to agree because we.
So what we like is basically authorization for Matthew and I to continue on this, right, without having to come back to this. I mean, allow Matthew and I to start driving the process forward, unless you all want to vote to come and score them all, and we want to do that.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's we need to, before we can go forward with lease negotiation type
Right.
things, we would need to agree as a board that, yes, that's who we want. And if it's not, then we should have a meeting for you guys to come in and explain the board's
So I would hope, if all goes according to schedule at our next meeting, which is the 21st or whatever.
Yeah.
We will have picked a candidate, and then we'll be opening envelope number 2 somewhere before that, and say, this is who we picked and who we.
And why.
Yeah. How
And
they
that,
scored
and that,
them.
right, and that's only like 5 days after the final working group meeting. So
Right.
that actually timing would work well.
I mean, we all have it. We all have the documents.
Yes,
So
yeah, yep.
it's, okay, so it's
Yeah.
not, nothing's a surprise to us, I just,
No.
unless something goes way out of left field or.
Well, I mean, I can share, I think Mark and I can share the criteria and
That would be, yeah. that-
So
don't know whether
there were 4 criteria in the lease, and then we
Yep.
basically agreed at our meeting what their relative weights were.
Yeah.
but we can share that with
Yeah, that would be
everybody.
helpful.
Absolutely. Okay.
So are you or are you not going to have a conversation with us before you proceed on negotiating the
We will,
lease?
Before we negotiate a lease, but not
Yes.
not before who we pick.
Not before you unveil an envelope.
Correct. Like, we will share with you our selection on the 21st, and we're assuming that you will agree with us, and we will then begin the lease process.
But just,
If we don't.
just because, nothing ever, there's never a
Right.
brick in the mix when the orchard is concerned, so I know this is out in left field, but what happens if we don't agree?
Then I guess we will have to decide whether or not any of the respondents are satisfactory for the lease.
But we've already opened an envelope, is there any,
You could still reject all the
doesn't matter?
applications, I mean, that's it, because you'd still have that right.
So they say, let's say, they come to us, you guys say,
Number 2.
yeah, number 2, and we say,
Yeah, 3 out of the 5.
we liked 1, and here's why, and you guys say, okay, actually, yeah, let's do 1, but we've already opened envelope 2, so then we just open
Right, I
envelope
mean,
1?
No, we won't open it until
Yeah,
we talk.
I mean, so if I may, the responsibility that Matthew and Mark are trying to take on is that the RFP has been issued, and there's criteria within that, and so as that, you had your meeting and just said, okay, this is worth 30 points, this is worth 50 points, whatever section it might be. So they're trying to quantify within the proposals they've received how they'll be graded. So it sounds like it's going to be both of you grading and some other members of the working group. And then presumably all those get added up, and then from that group, you will have an entity that has the highest points. And that would be the party presumably that you would be moving forward with.
So at our meeting in, not this week, the following week, where the Orchard Working Group meets.
The 15th.
The 15th, Matthew will say, I gave number 2
Yep.
40
So the
points in
grading
this
gets done.
category, and
Yeah,
I said, I only gave him 30, and we're gonna haggle.
Okay.
Right.
So we'll sell tickets.
So I guess when it comes back to us on the 21st, you are going to have a recommendation.
Exactly.
And then our board will discuss.
And we can justify how we made that recommendation based on those criteria, why.
Right.
And if
this-
you two aren't in sync there, we could have an issue. But if you are in sync, then it would take Karen, myself, and Chuck to say, no, we're not moving forward.
That's
with
correct,
this.
yeah.
Let's either open up talk about another lease, or at that point, we would have to be discussing a sale.
We're starting the process of
Starting the
discussing the
process.
sale, yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure we're
Yep.
all,
That,
I'm getting it in my head.
that sounds like the process, I think, that's what's happening.
Okay.
Unless, you guys could also just say, we scored them all and there's a top candidate, but it's just not good enough.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, on this lease, 1, how long is it for?
We have not negotiated any of the details of the lease yet.
Maximum is 30 years that we're authorized to negotiate at this time.
2, the problem that the town has with that, is that being addressed? I mean, you got the house over there, that barn over there is, what about that? Are we still on the hook that we gotta take care of this, even though we get a lease? Has what's over there is gonna be rectified, and taxpayers ain't gonna have to worry about taking care of it?
No, if we're leasing it, the taxpayers will have to take care of some of that property.
Most likely.
Most
Well,
likely, yeah.
We haven't negotiated the terms of the lease, so we can't actually say what the taxpayers are or are not responsible for.
Well, as far as the
But the
house-
house is not even included at all in this process.
Okay, it's not included, so why don't we dispose of the house?
We're discussing it.
That will be the next step.
Okay, because, you know, I'd rather see the lease of what needs to be leased, and that stuff that we got left around that we need to take care. Let's just get rid of it for one time, and we don't have to worry about it.
So the house could not be included in the lease because it is not, we cannot legally lease it in its current condition.
Yeah, I
So-
understand that, but we can burn it, give the fire department a chance to go out there and do a little training. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Rob Brown's 25 Juniper Road. I may have misunderstood the working group discussion the other night, but I thought there was going to be a reaching out to former
There
members
was.
of the working group. Could I get an update on
They
that
all
tonight?
declined.
Thank you.
And you didn't go with any new members?
That's correct.
No. There's not enough life left in the working group to expand it.
So you're only
We're
having
hoping to.
one. This
Two
one.
meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Minutes. I had one thing on the minutes, I just have to find it. Give me a second. There was one that was somewhere, that was accessible when it should have been accessible, or the other way around.
We can find that, Mark, we can do a word search.
There, it's on, it's
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
there it is.
minutes. Nothing,
It's,
there's no numbers.
yeah, it's on, in the packet, it's on page 121.
Yeah. First paragraph, Alan Silverberg, Aspen Road.
Any other
It's a
corrections?
caramel instead of caramel.
Yeah, we can look at that.
It's making the trail more accessible when it should be accessible.
Okay. So I move that the select board vote to approve the meeting minutes from the select board meeting on September 23rd, 2024 as amended.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
I move that the select board adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Good night.
So-